Good evening, folks. I'd like to call this meeting back to order. We'd gone into executive session to discuss an issue with the construction of the new fire station, which we're taking under advisement for future action. And secondly, we approved a contract with SEIU, Managers Union contract. Let me initially read a statement here. As required by open meeting law, you are hereby informed that the town will be video and audio taping as well as live broadcasting this public meeting. In addition, anyone in the audience who plans to video or audio tape this meeting must notify the chair prior to the start of the meeting. So this is your chance to speak up if you're ambitious enough to record this meeting. Let's move then to Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item on the agenda is weekly briefing. Is there anyone here for a weekly briefing? Chief?
Mr. Chairman, Chief Dave Gilmet, Harwich PD. Just very quickly, I want to extend my sincere thanks to our Harbor Master, John Rendon. I don't know if any of you saw the news items last Wednesday. It was actually Tuesday night, I think. We had a 36-foot sport fishing boat stolen out of Allen's Harbor Marine, and it was out on the high seas. And Harbor Master Rendon responded immediately and got our troops out there, and they were able to stop the boat about three miles out off the harbor and arrest 4 individuals for the crime. So it was a fantastic example of teamwork, and obviously we can't catch the bad guys if we can't get to them. So I thank Mr. Rendon, and I think it was a good night all around. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Certainly more exciting, I assume, than the normal day. Anyone else for weekly briefing?
Hi there, I'm Jenny Hewitt. I'm the director at Brooks Free Library. I wanted to make sure the residents and our visitors and seasonal residents know about some of the activities going on at the library. Our summer reading program is in full swing right now. We partner with the Harwich Elementary School parent-teacher organization on that. When students read for 2.5 hours, they get a small incentive prize. We also have a lot of programs going on. We have Pitter-Patter Puppets tomorrow, Lego Fun the next day, a storyteller on Thursday. We have story time and a slime program on Friday for the older kids. So I know there's a long agenda, so I won't give you all the programs going on, but just know that they're on our website, which is brooksfreelibrary.org. And there's something almost every day, and sometimes 2 programs a day. But we can't let the kids have all the fun. We have a summer reading program for adults, and you can enter weekly to win a gift certificate to Dairy Queen, and which is always nice in the summer. And at the end of the summer, we have a drawing for a Kindle Fire. We also have passes for free or discounted admission to area museums and attractions. We have public computers, board games, DVDs, puzzles, and, oh, by the way, books that you can take home. So you don't need to be a full-time resident to get a Harwich Library card, and that's why I wanted to make sure people were aware. And the final thing I wanted to say is we have slightly fewer parking places than normal since we have this historic preservation project going on that you might have noticed, or covered with scaffolding on 2 parts of the building. But there's plenty of parking across the street at Town Hall, behind Town Hall, and at Brooks Park. So just plan ahead and be careful crossing the street. But and also people may want to try to come after mid-afternoon, after say 3 o'clock. There tends to be more parking available. So thank you.
Jenny, just the reconstruction, the outside, what's the schedule for completion of that is?
They have months, 5 or 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a process. We wish it wasn't happening in the summer when it is so congested, but the stripping of the paint has to be done when it's over 60 degrees at night, so it's an inconvenience for sure, but it's going, so we're excited about that after many years.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for weekly briefing? Public comment? Any announcements? Our town planner?
Good evening, I'm Charlene Greenhalgh, your town planner. I'm actually here to wish a very wonderful lady who does a lot for this community, Cindy Williams, a very happy birthday. And I have baked cupcakes, which I'll hand you guys a box and there'll be some out here, and I'm not gonna sing, I promise that. So, happy birthday to Cindy.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Just I'm sure everyone knows this, but Cindy's the chair of the Harwich Chamber of Commerce, and does a great job, and also is involved in many of our programs in town where we work cooperatively with. So I guess I'm trying to ignore my own birthdays, but happy birthday.
She's the executive director of the Harwich Chair.
Good evening. As most of you know, I'm Barbara Burgo, the curator of the Harwich Cape Verdean Museum. I was here about a year and a half ago last year when you generously awarded Jane Texera Henry and myself the go-ahead unanimously with the whole group to get the museum started. It has been a tumultuous year and exceedingly difficult, as many of you know. And I had a difficult time paying the rent, the bad winter, the lack of participation from the town because I couldn't get up and running, my work schedule, a turnover in the board. It's been horrendous, but you've been patient. And so I was supposed to have the lease signed August 1st. It hasn't been because I was in arrears for a while. I mentioned to Mr. Clark that we were going to do a GoFundMe. In 6 days, I earned the $1,500 I needed to pay it off, and I got the thank you from Carolyn today for the online payment. What I was mentioning to Mr. Clark then was, please, I need 1 more year to get really going. And I really needed 1 more weekend, because this past weekend, I'm wearing this, was the first in this millennium, the genealogy conference for Cape Verdeans in Boston. And I was promised assistance. And I know you can't go with a promise. I'm here to ask you again to allow me some leeway to get this museum going. Not just with a promise, with some facts. I bring you, and I lost my sister-in-law this weekend, so 2 full days in Boston, and I had to write it on a napkin at work. I bring you, we say, Montañas from the Consul General of Cape Verde in Boston. It's Owen Quincy. The consulate has agreed to support this Cape Verdean Museum in Harwich. The consulate is eager to obtain a welcome and an invitation to visit the museum and the town of Harwich. You know, when I started that 2012 exhibit at the Academy, it was our own senator at the time, Dan Wolf, who said, I am amazed with the wealth of information that we didn't know about the Cape Verdeans. This should be a permanent exhibit. That's what I said. In Creole, they say, from your lips to God's ears, please let it happen. So I have picked up support this past weekend from not only the Consul General, he gave me his card, and he asked, I told him I would pass it along to you, so I just ran to Staples and got copies. On here is also a welcome and a thank you from the Cape Verdean ambassador, Carlos Juanan Vega. Carlos Vega I met in '97 and '98 when I was a student doing a summer seminar abroad in Cape Verde. Carlos Juanan Vega says we have his support. The third person here is somebody I started crying when I shook his hand. He was an original freedom fighter Rich Houston, I wish he was here, would know. Amilcar Cabral was the father of our revolution and was assassinated in 1973, a year and a half before we got independence. I know our friend here from the Chronicle, Bill, knows that. Baltasar Barros was there when Cabral got assassinated. He's 70 years old this year, and his wife and he are wealthy. They wrote me a $500 check yesterday to pay August's museum rent. They are very wealthy, and he said, as long as we keep this museum going, the items that he has from the independence struggle, he would donate to this museum. The folks from the conference, the genealogy conference, have partnered with me, along with the Cape Verdean Association of Brockton, which Mr. Clark already knows allows me to use their 501c3. Their first president was my father-in-law that we lost last year. 42 years ago, he started that oldest and most effective Cape Verdean association in the country. They have a consulate office hours there. I'm hoping to get a consulate office hours here. The genealogy folks from Maryland to Rhode Island to Texas to California to Florida have all begged. Connecticut was here visiting. I talked to Ed McManus. They begged us to keep this open because we are going to then host a room for genealogy research, and I will be able to get, of course, funding once this goes forward. After 5 years of presenting in the schools, you know, I have been the one sponsoring the prize for the students, and it was in the name of my mother, who was literally born in Harwich in 1928. The other 5 siblings lived here, my aunts, my uncles, my grandmother, and she was sent to Taunton to live with her aunt and uncle, a story I won't get to. But my grandmother, Beatrice Lopes Fonseca's sister, twin sister, was Bernice Lopes. You folks know Ed McManus gave me the approval back in 2012 to put a Cape Verdean flag on that stone, that monument that says it's the C. Clifford Peters Town Square. That is my cousin who died in World War II. The reason that I'm trying to do this as a Cape Verdean museum is because, sadly, we've lost so much of our Cape Verdean background, heritage, and cultural history. I've asked for a picture of my cousin, Clifford Peters. No one seems to have it. The museum doesn't seem to have one. What they did give me are pictures with my great aunt here, Aunt Bernice, at the memorial when they dedicated it, and a picture, I guess they're Gold Star mothers for Memorial Day. These things should have been on the wall. I didn't know they existed until this past year when the museum donated them to me. So many other things I can't even tell you, but I will finish with, here's a picture of one of the tune weavers, happy, happy birthday, baby, Johnny Silver. They got the first gold record for that song, and they were Cape Verdeans. Somebody told me Lena Horne's father was a Cape Verdean. There's so much more to do, and so much more to be done. Congressman George Lima from Rhode Island, who passed a few years ago, was a Tuskegee Airman. He was a Cape Verdean. I'm asking, and I know it's a big ask, but I now have support. I now have funding. The consulate has asked me to go up there on Friday morning to give me another check. I can't tell you how much it is, but on behalf of Consul General Herminio Moines, many of you met the other ambassador, Fatima Vega, in 2012. They change over with new administration like we do. So Consul General Herminio Moines is asking, please, to keep this museum open. Please, he will support us. I will show you their check. And my new cousin from Sant Anton says she has a condo there.
Thank you very much for the history and all your good work. I think the board took action on this a year ago to give spatial consideration for release. We probably need to bring it back as an agenda item to do it formally.
Yeah, I think where it's not on the agenda, Mr.
We
Chairman.
can't, you know, this is a, yeah, we can't discuss it tonight other than presentations, but
Right.
we'll bring it back as an agenda item.
August 20th.
Exactly. I just wanted to get to it because Mr. Clark had said I had until the 20th to make a decision. I've heard from no one. I've emailed everyone. I've heard from no one.
We'll put it
And
on the agenda.
then
for
I was
the
going,
20th, and so we can bring it
so I'm
back.
going to pass this
Chris-
to
Chris?
you.
Actually, I will follow up to it,
Okay.
Barbara. She sent some material. I haven't had a chance to go through all of it yet.
Okay,
Thank you for your
Thank you.
patience. Thank you for your consideration. The country is waiting for this. It will be the first ever.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good discussion. Anyone else for public comment? Ed?
We had a mention of Brooks Park earlier. I just would like to announce putting my Harwich Cranberry Festival hat on this weekend. We'll be hosting a craft fair at Brooks Park both Saturday and Sunday, and should be a good group of crafters and artisans there, and we invite you all to stop by. Thank you.
We'll move next to our
They're not together.
non-resident taxpayers meeting. Ed, do you want to open this? Can we post this?
You want to read this?
The posting.
Oh, the,
Yeah, there's a posting.
We did add one that was off the posting, so if you want to read the agenda, it would be more complete.
okay. You mean,
We'll
We'll
just,
have that.
we'll go ahead.
I-
The first to make presentation is review, update of the fire station. Chief Clark?
Good evening, board, and good evening, non-resident taxpayers. How many are here that are non-resident taxpayers? Who am I talking to? Yeah, that's true. Well, I'm glad you're here. In years past, we haven't had a lot of participation, so this is a good thing. The topic that I was asked to speak on was our reconstruction of our East Harwich Fire Station. Harwich Fire Department runs 2 firehouses. We are a full-time fire department. We are a fire EMS department. We are staffed with quality firefighters that also are trained, cross-trained in being EMTs and paramedics. So we provide all the folks and visitors with advanced life support, as well as a highly trained fire department. In 1975 or 6, the town decided they wanted a second fire station, so they were given some land by the Kroll family, which is a family that's been here for years and years and years, out in East Harwich by Stop and Shop. Give you a little history. In 1977, that was staffed with 1 person. In 1977, I was one of 4 people to be hired to bring that staffing to 2. We presently staff it with 3. So we're not building this fire station to dramatically increase our staffing, although it would only make sense to build it in such a way that 40 or 50 years from now, if the town so chose to add more people, we could. We do staff it with male and female firefighters and paramedics. That was one of the issues back in 1976 and 75. That just didn't happen. You had firefighters were male. Well, that's changed, and that's a good thing. Matter of fact, I just promoted our first female captain. So, several years ago, we did know that this aging fire station needed to, eventually was going to have to be worked on, so we were in the capital plan for $2 million. And we upgraded that probably 4 or 5 years ago, 4 to 5 years ago, to $4 million. And through a consultant, which I am not a trained professional in this, said, Chief, you're all set for $4 million. Don't worry about it, you're all set. Well, you can only imagine how that went. Didn't go well. We just signed, through the state of Massachusetts, the bid laws, a contract with a company out of Lincoln, Rhode Island for $6.75 million. That was an uncomfortable situation for all of us, mostly me. But we had to follow the rules. And incidentally, our original plan was to fix up and add on to that station, and that would have cost the taxpayers about $1 million more. So it made sense. We have 3 acres out there, so we're constructing a new firehouse out in East Harwich. The present one comes out on Route 137. The new one will come out on Route 39. If you go in the side entrance to the Stop and Shop, you come out that way, you're going to be looking right at it. So that worked out very well for us. That kind of wraps up what we're doing. I mean, we're using all the efficiencies with that station, and that's an overview. 2 years ago, we came to town meeting for plans and specifications to get the bid documents out, and we appropriated $310,000 for that. And last town meeting, we did appropriate the full amount to construct this fire station. It's going to take about 14 months to do that. In the town of Harwich, last year, we did 4,205 runs, and just checked the other day, and we're up 650 runs. So we're busy. We're busy. We work very closely with our other department heads, DPW, the community center, John Rondon, our harbor master, and certainly our police department. We are all in one building on Sisson Road, and we work uniquely very well in this town as departments. It's better for the folks, and it's more efficient.
Thank you, Chief. Anyone have questions for Chief Clark? We have a question here. Yeah, I'm afraid you have to use the mic too, so the folks at home can hear you on TV.
I just wanted to know when the new station's going to be done.
Thank you.
We're hoping 14 months from July.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chief. Next on the agenda is report from John Rendon, our harbor master. And we promise this will be calmer than chasing people on the.
Good evening, John Rendon, Harbor Master. It's good to be here to talk to you, give you a rundown. It's been a real busy year for our Harbor Master Department. Just a quick summary, we have 4 full-time employees within our department, and then we hire a handful of seasonal employees during the summer. And we're a multi-mission department. We do maritime assistance, law enforcement. We maintain all our aids to navigation, all the buoys that you see out there we maintain. We're in charge of keeping our channels dredged. Dredging is a big component of what we do every year here in Harwich. Mooring management, we have a 200-plus slip marina that we manage, along with all of our other waterways, and we do a lot of permitting, mooring management, or mooring permits, waterway user fee, offloading permits. And so a lot's going on in the department, and this summer has been a busy summer. We had about 36 cases so far, maritime assistance types cases, and we've also completed 2 dredge projects, with one getting ready to happen this month in August, late August. We dredged Allen Harbor, which we do every year, and that sand went on all public beaches, Gray Neck, Wauwatasi, Atlantic Ave, Zilpha Road, missing one, Ocean, I think, Ocean Ave. And then we also dredged Saquatucket Harbor, and we put some sand on some private beaches as well as Neal Road. And then we're getting ready to dredge Round Cove in this August. It was supposed to be done a little earlier. We're trying to marry up with Chatham. The dredge is there, as you probably have read in the papers. They're trying to do some dredging there in Chatham, and so we're piggybacking on them while they have the dredge in Pleasant Bay area. So we'll get Round Cove hopefully done by the end of the month. What I'd like to do quickly is to kind of give you a quick summary of the 2 projects that we have going on. 2 major projects. One, we replaced our municipal marina, Saquatucket Harbor Municipal Marina, and we also have a landside project that is well underway there at Saquatucket Harbor. So I'll quickly go through some slides. Most of them are pictures just to kind of give you an idea of where we're at. So one of the first things this winter, we started this project, and A big part of it was to dredge the inner harbor, Saquatucket Harbor. The gray area, or the purple area that you see there is the areas that we dredged out of Saquatucket. That harbor hasn't really been dredged since it was created back in the late 60s, early 70s. And so it was a big part of this project. We dredged, let me see if I can get back to that. It was bucket dredge work. So a big barge came in with that big crane bucket there, dredged about 18,500 cubic yards of material. That material was loaded on barges, and because of the content of the material, it couldn't be put on beaches. It had to be taken to an offshore disposal site, and that offshore disposal site was out off of Rhode Island Sound. So it was quite the operation. They'd fill up those scows and tow them out, dump them out offshore, and then come back and start all over again. So that was much of the winter. And then we pulled all our old docks, all our old piles, everything out of the harbor in anticipation of getting new docks and piles and services in. And you'll see here, this picture is overhead taken of Saquatucket Harbor completely empty. That's after the dredge had been done and all of the material had been cleared, and they were getting ready to start replacement of the docks. And so that's our new dock system. We added about 11 additional slips. We did some reconfiguration of our slips. That picture was taken right around Memorial Day. Our target for that project was to have the marina, half of the marina open in time for the start of the boating season, which was Memorial Day weekend. And so the west half of the marina was completed, and we got our boats in time to start the season, and then we chipped away at the east dock throughout that next month. Big part of the project was to bring in the ferry and all the other passenger boats into the bulkhead so that we could have handicap accessibility. So you see that picture there in the lower left-hand corner. That's the ferry and one of the other passenger boats. That's their slip location. And this is the whole handicap accessible ramping system that is in place. And it provides full, complete access. It loads at the respective loading heights of each of our 4 passenger boats. And it's a big improvement to our marina. It really is. So that kind of gives you an idea that where the harbor's full, everything up and running, that is new Saquatucket Harbor there. Concrete mains, you'll see. The main docks are all 8-foot wide concrete, and then the fingers coming off of that are tropical hardwood timber docks. All new piles, new electric, new water, wireless internet. So we're fully complete. It's up and running with the exception of the wireless internet because they had to wait for the building to get done. So that should happen in the next 2 weeks. That'll be hooked up and running. So that's our new harbor. Big project. And let's talk a little bit about the land side. You may have seen this before. This was kind of the concept that we've been going on for a year and a half or so. That's kind of the footprint of what we were trying to do. The elements of the landside project is to replace the Harbor Master office building that includes the Natural Resources Department office plus boater restrooms and public restrooms. There's a boardwalk element of this project with deck area and also a snack shack. And then we're going to have a row of artisan shacks where local artists can sell their goods at the harbor. And then also on the Downey property, that empty lot there, the old former Downey property, it's now obviously part of Saquatucket Harbor. We're putting our new workshop building. We're getting out of the Bank Street old fire station building, and we're moving our garage workshop operation to the harbor. And then we're increasing parking by about 90 parking spaces. So this was the architect design of the new Harbor Master office and the snack shack with the supporting boardwalk and deck area. Oops. So back in December, we knocked down and demoed our old harbor master office building. And throughout the winter, we were building, constructing. There's our new harbor master office with the panels up, and then a picture of it pretty close, the exterior pretty close to being completed with the deck area that supports it. The boardwalk goes the entire length of the marina for great viewing of our marina, and it also provides that access, that handicap access down to that area where folks will board the ferry and the passenger boats. So the entire facility, you could park on the Downey property, and the entire facility will have handicap accessibility to get to the marina. This is a picture of, pretty recent picture of the snack shack that is just going up, along with the boardwalk that supports it. That's a sitting wall there, and you know, next season when we actually have that leased out, there'll be picnic tables and places to sit and eat outside. It's just strictly a walk-up window takeout type operation that we're looking for, and we'll be putting an RFP out to request bids for people to run that. We're going to lease it. The town will not be running it. And this is a pretty recent picture of the garage workshop that you see on 28 on the old former Downey property. And so we're not done yet. You know, we're going to be working through the fall. A big part of that is to come in and pave the Downey property and add those parking spaces and do some landscaping to clean up that site. But as you see, a lot of progress has been made. So if there's any questions.
Thank you, John. Questions for John?
The marina was a $7 million project, and we got $1 million from the state, $1 million Seaport Economic Council grant to go towards that, and then about 70% of the remaining $6 million will be paid for out of harbor revenue that we generate through our operation. And then the land side, the price tag is going to be about 3.8, 3.7, 3.8. We got $1 million grant in addition from the state to put towards that project. So that's where we're at. Okay.
Any other question? If not, thank you, John.
Okay, thank you.
Next on the agenda is report from the Recreational Director, Eric Beebe.
Thank you. I'm Eric Beebe. I'm the Recreation Director. Through the Recreation Department in the summer, we manage all beaches, kids' youth programming, adult programming, in addition to during the year doing youth programming, adult programming, fields, parks, memorial squares. Just to give you an idea, during the year we have about 4 people on our staff. In the summer we go up to about 75. Big part of that's the beaches, and that's a big part of why we're having a successful summer again this year. We have about 30 lifeguards on staff. They're all CPR and first aid trained. We haven't had many emergencies this year, and I think a big part of that is a testament to our staff this year. They're very proactive. We train them to be proactive and stop emergencies before they start. So we've had a great summer for that, and we're constantly bringing in new staff. We actually have a 90% returnee staff this year. So almost all of our guards came back this year, as well as gate attendants. We just finished out, or we're about to finish out, our lifeguard training class, which we do in-house. A lot of towns don't do that. We're certified to train them ourselves. We have a class of about 7 15-year-olds that are all on track to pass, and they'll be ready to get on the beach next year. We also started a newer program called Guard Start. It's for our younger kids that want to eventually be lifeguards. You have to be 15 to get certified, but if you're 13 or 14, you could take Guard start to learn the concepts of lifeguarding. As you get into lifeguard training, you'll know what you're getting into, if it's something you really want to pursue. And it's been successful in the past in keeping us fully staffed every year. We also have a ton of returnees for all our programs. We have a large camp that we see, usually around 500 kids a summer. We have tennis lessons and swim lessons and everything you could think of, and we're always open to new ideas. We even do archery this year. So it's a great program. We've seen a lot of the ways we judge how busy our beaches have been every summer is by day pass sales by our gate attendants, and we are on track to shatter our record for day passes. A lot of it has to do with weather, a lot of it has to do with staff, and a lot of it has to do with how our beaches look. Our highway department does a great job of keeping them pristine, you know, as much as they possibly can, and I think it shows by having packed parking lots every day. A couple new things with the beaches this year. Last year we started kayak and stand-up paddleboard rentals at Cahoon's Beach. We did it a couple days a week to kind of see how it went. It was a great success, so now we're doing those 7 days a week. We've already seen, I believe, over 150 rentals at this point in the summer. We also have 2 lending libraries now at 2 of our beaches that people really enjoy, Bank Street and Red River Beach. So there's a couple new things going on. We're still selling Red River Beach t-shirts and Harwich Beaches t-shirts, so if anybody wants one, you know, come to the office or see a gate guard. And then a couple of the projects we have going on around town with parks and fields. We're currently working on Brooks Park Phase 4. This has been going on for years. Some of the earlier phases included our picnic pavilion, additional pickleball courts, additional parking lot. Phase 4, we completed the first half in the spring, which was the extension of the playground, which people love so far, and we're close to getting our restroom facility put in, right by the pickleball courts. We also received funding this past May for Phase 5, which is going to be new lighting at the park, all LED lighting, which will be easier to use and manage and much lower electricity bills for the town. This spring, we also completed the paving of Red River Beach. We paved the whole parking lot, so that's been nice. And a couple things coming up. Within a couple days, we're going to start out on a project for White House Field with a whole new irrigation system. We're also going to be doing paving on Bank Street Beach, which we received funding for in May. And one thing kind of ahead in the future that we've started to look at with the Rec and Youth Commission is the revitalization of Sand Pond. We see that as a resource that's really valuable to the town. It's a large parking lot. We've been discussing things like putting in a new restroom facility, fully handicap accessible, maybe a playground, basketball courts, recreational activities there to really bring families in and kind of bring it back up to speed. So, you know, we're having a great year. We're busy. We have a great staff, and, you know, it's because of them that we could do this, and we're looking forward to everything ahead.
Thank you, Eric. Questions for Eric? Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Next, we'll hear from our DPW Director, Lincoln Hooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Link Hooper, DPW Director. I was asked to talk about beaches and trash pickup, but I'd like to give a brief overview of the DPW and a couple major projects we got going on. The DPW actually has 35 full-time employees made up of 7 distinct departments. We have disposal, waste management services, highway division, parks, cemeteries, vehicle maintenance, facility maintenance, and custodial. I think that was 7. We also have a number of full-time employees, and we gear up with summer. We haven't been as successful as Mr. Beebe in attracting summer help, even though we went to starting pay of like $15 an hour. We were fortunate to have a few come back this year, but they are integral to doing everything that you folks enjoyed during the summer, is getting seasonal help. We have 2 major projects, and ironically, I got a call today about Lower County Road. The gentleman said, hey, I voted for this at town meeting. When are you going to go construction? Lower County Road will be reconstructed, hopefully, beginning a year from this September. The work that's going to be happening on Lower County Road coming up is water department work. They have $1.3 million worth of infrastructure improvements. They actually had some 2-inch water main down near the Dennis line that they are replacing and making with modern that can serve fire hydrants and so forth. I believe they are commencing that work shortly after Labor Day, and it's anticipated to be 6 or 8 weeks. That is not the reconstruction project that I'm attempting to promulgate. Hopefully, will be able to bring this to town meeting this year. It's anticipated to be about a $4.5 million project, and it's a complete reconstruction of the drainage systems, the sidewalk, which is a continuous sidewalk from Route 28 to the Dennistown line, as well as new road surface. And 2 parts of that road are in dire need, and when the water department gets done, it's gonna be in even worse shape. Another project we have in the queue is Route 28, and although Route 28 in West Harwich is a state road, the town decided to go after a transportation improvement project because the town of Dennis has one that is gonna be beginning construction this fall. So the town of Dennis, from the low-income housing, I forget the name of the road it is, on a steep corner down by 28, all the way just shy of the intersection, town of Dennis is gonna have a complete new roadway. And the impetus behind going for this was, we can't have people driving through a nice new roadway in Dennis and then get to Harwich. So, we really wanted to make a difference there. So we have applied for it. It's been accepted. It's slated for, I believe, 2022. It's anticipated about a $5.6 million project. Includes the 2 intersections that, well, one's half in Dennis, one's half in Harwich, and one in Dennis, that the Dennis project did not include. Really, that intersection is what'll make the difference. Anybody heading west this time of year knows that you can sit in that line for 10, 15 minutes heading towards Dennis. And hopefully that will go away with a new modernized signal. And that project needs to be built to state standards, which is usually shoulder, what they call bike lanes on either side, and sidewalks on both sides. And will be from the town line to the Herring River Bridge, just shy of the Herring River Bridge. And we're excited to go after that, and hopefully that section of 28 really does need a facelift, and this will help with that. Back to the beaches. We are charged with maintaining the beaches, and we surf rake 7 town beaches. I mean, we have a tractor and we tow the surf rake that makes it look all manicured. A guy named is David Rydington. He does a fabulous job. He makes that look like it belongs down the Florida Keys. We have 7 beaches that we use a surf rake on. Most of them are 3 times per week. We do Bank Street, Brooks Road Beach, Earl Road Beach, Pleasant Road Beach, and Red River Beach, 3 times per week. Sometimes if there's heavy seaweed down there, you might see him with a front end loader. Usually he's gone before any of you show up. He starts very early in the morning, starts down at 5 o'clock, and usually off the beaches at 9 when people start to show up. We do service Fernandez Bog and Cahoon Road Beach, but only as needed and maybe once a month. In total, we have 22 town-owned beaches. The rest of them we don't have access to with a machine, the heavy equipment to get the surf rake down there. Trash pickup. I couldn't believe we actually pick up this much trash. We have 38 locations, counting for 88 containers that are picked up. And those are picked up every single day. During the summer months, they're actually picked up once a day and twice on the weekends. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we have a morning run and an afternoon run. And again, the seasonal help is integral. We usually run this with actually a retired gentleman that used to run our disposal area for the last 15 years. A retired fisherman, actually, that we hired, and he didn't know what to do with himself and came back, and he's up at 4 o'clock and goes out and picks up the trash. So there's 88 cans. It's 38 stops. During the off-season, say October to May, we still have 30 cans deployed, and we go out usually once a week. So it's not like we just pull the carpet in and stop. It's really the dynamics have changed in such that people are using the facilities all year round, dog walkers, and we need to have trash cans down there. Part of providing the service is public restrooms. We have 10 public restrooms in town that are serviced June through Labor Day, 2 times per day, cleaned and stocked. From Labor Day to November, we still do that once a day. So again, it's not like, you know, Labor Day comes and we pull in the carpet. There's still work to be done. And again, we have actually a retired woman that does most of that. It's really yeoman's work there. Another component, mowing grass. Again, I had no idea we had this many memorial squares. There's 19 memorial squares that we take care of. And there's 6 parks that we mow. There is 8 athletic ball fields and 11 town-owned buildings. Again, I couldn't emphasize seasonal help. I think that's the 4th time I said that. Without seasonal help, this all would not get done. In addition to that, we also have roadside mowing that you're never completely caught up with. We try to do what we can. Usually have 2 guys on yard tractors that are mowing the side of the road, and then 1 guy on a swing arm mower. And we do what we can. With 142 miles of roads, 482 public roads, you never get caught up. You just concentrate on the mains and do what you can and take care of the problem intersections. I'd like to conclude by saying out of 35 people, they all do an excellent job. They touch each and every one of your lives, and they make me look good, which isn't easy.
Link, I have one question. Red River Beach, I noticed, has not a big, but some seaweed buildup. I was there a couple days ago, and some other people pointed out. Is that, I mean, we had a week of really strong winds. Is that just means we're not, the 3 times a week, it occasionally doesn't keep up?
It's all dependent on tides and wind direction. You have a strong southwest wind, you get seaweed built up. You get a north wind, you usually don't have any. So there's days we show up and you need to go back or go get the front end loader. Right? And there's other days the surf rake does it. It really is so much contingent upon the weather.
Thank you. Any other questions for Link? We have a couple.
I just have one, and it's a little bit more of a request than a question. At the library, the garden club, I'll give them a good plug here, does a great job with the garden in the middle of the parking lot, but the rest of the property is pretty much overrun with weeds, and I think it would be really nice if that could get addressed.
Before you step down, for the record, your name?
Dot Bolia.
Thank you. Link, is that in your bailiwick?
Possibly.
Answer it anyway.
If that's a priority, then we can make it happen. I mean, it's always horse trading what gets done and what doesn't. The garden club, I couldn't say that better. They do amazing work. We provide the garden club and assist them with whatever we can. And they really do keep a lot of the squares looking great. We're not the ones that go out and weed that sort of stuff. We simply, you know, it's a trade-off of what doesn't get done.
Okay, thank you. I think there's a second question. You have to use the microphone, please, and identify yourself.
Suzanne Moody.
Okay.
My question is, in improving Route 28, by having the town do it, does that change the way the state takes, whether or not the state will take care of the road afterwards, or now are we on the hook to take care of it for the rest of the time? And also, do you advertise at the high schools for summer help?
We do.
All right.
It's not been very fruitful. I should have been more clear about what a TIP project is. A TIP project is where the town is responsible generally for designing a project to Mass DOT standards, and then the advertising of that project, the funding of that project, the oversight of that project, all is done by Mass DOT, the state agency. In this instance, the town is simply designing the project to their standards, and they're going to be doing everything else. It does not change the ownership of the road. It's still Mass DOT's road. The sidewalks in this instance will still be Mass DOT sidewalks. We've been attempting to get a sidewalk from Bank Street to Saquatucket Harbor. In fact, the administrator was successful in getting $250,000 for that. We are in the process of working with Mass DOT to get that done. In that instance, Mass DOT will require that we take over maintenance of that new sidewalk.
Thank you, Link.
So that 5.6 million isn't going to be, that tax
No.
Lynn, can you repeat the question? just so-
Okay, she asked if we were gonna be on the hook for the construction dollars for the Route 28 project. The answer is no. And in fact, we're doing this very frugally. The design costs are a little over $300,000. The board approved using some transportation mitigation funds that the commission had on our behalf. I believe that number was like $175,000, so that was not even money that's coming out of the taxpayers. We'll probably be on the hook for somewhere in the neighborhood of $130,000 for the second phase of the design, and that's it.
Thank you, Link. Next up is Judy Wilson, Council on Aging.
Hi. I just thought I would take a minute to talk a little bit about what the Council on Aging does, what our mission is. The mission of the Council on Aging is to support and advocate for the older adults, families, and caregivers in our community. That's our mission, but what do we do? We provide health and wellness programs, informational and educational programs, transportation, social and recreational programs. Tonight I just left, we had what we are calling our first annual barbecue. We had entertainment and had 60 people for dinner this evening. One of the most important things that we really do, though, is assist some of our most vulnerable citizens with connecting them with the needs to meet their needs as they grow older. We really try and support people who want to age in place in the community. Our funding stream is not just taxpayer support. Our funding is supported by state revenue. We also are supported by gifts and donations, and we have a revolving fund, and we also apply for almost any grant that we can apply for to support programming. Looking to the future, I think something that is pretty significant that's happening in the next 18 months is that we are part of a county initiative right now to do a age and dementia-friendly assessment that will give us a little bit of a roadmap for our community moving forward on how to address some of those issues. We have been impacted by the aging of the population. We'll soon be approaching 50% of our community being over 60. We have 5,700 residents right now that are over the age of 60. Our main form of communication is a newsletter, and I put copies back up on the table. And we do mail them to any resident 60 years and older who wants one, taxpayer or resident or non-resident taxpayer. You're still entitled to that. I guess I'd like to talk to a little bit about what we can do for you as a non-resident taxpayer. Tomorrow afternoon, I have a meeting with somebody who's a summer resident who's thinking about making Harwich their long-term home. But they are being more planful than most and want to know what kind of resources are available because somebody in their family is impacted by chronic disease, impacted by Parkinson's. So we'll be talking a little bit with them about what kind of resources are available to them here on the Cape for what their needs are now and what they can project their needs to be in the future, and try and connect them with some of the activities and services that might be beneficial to them as they change their residence full-time to Harwich. So that's one of the things that we do for our non-resident taxpayers. We have a social service coordinator who meets with people in their homes. We work closely with the town nurse. We provide meals. Transportation is a huge part of what we do, and we're working on some improvements to that program as we speak. We're busy right now, I think, in part because of the change in our population over the last couple of years, and we're doing lots of exciting new things. I mean, one of the things that is starting this month is we try and identify what some of the unmet needs of seniors are in our community, and then we try and find resources to meet those needs as creatively and affordably as we can. We're bringing a mobile dental clinic into the Council on Aging primarily because people with Mass Health can't find resources to help meet their needs. So we're doing that. We work closely with our Friends organization who support us quite generously, and when we can think of a service need that they can help with, they've been very gracious at helping us do that. So that's what we do. If you are interested as a non-resident taxpayer in receiving our newsletter, I left some registration forms on the back table and that'll just get you into our database, and you can let us know where we should mail your newsletter. But you're certainly always welcome to come in and find out what's going on while you're here.
Thank you, Judy. Are there any questions? Thanks again. Next is Jamie Goodwin, and we rarely let her out in the open, but
Thank
but she's
you.
On this side of the camera this
Yes,
time.
since Carolyn volunteered me to present this evening, I'm making her do my job while I stand up here in front of everybody. Those of you who don't know me, my name is Jamie Goodwin. I'm the Channel 18 station manager. This September, I'll be celebrating 8 years as a town employee. And when I started, they used to call me the TV girl, and somebody recently called me the TV lady. I don't know what that means, but I'm taking offense to it. I'm here today to show you non-resident taxpayers. If you are interested in following Channel 18, sorry, this is kind of hard to do from here. Let's see. If you would like to watch Channel 18 from anywhere in the world, if that's what you're interested in doing, I would direct you to the Town of Harwich website, which is www.harwich-ma.gov. And on the left-hand side, there's a really cute button that says Channel 18, and you would click that. There are 3 ways that you can watch Channel 18 on the go: live streaming, on-demand video service, and then YouTube. Live streaming, the only thing that we live stream currently is the Board of Selectmen's meeting. Other than that, you can watch things on demand, or you can click this YouTube link right here. We're at the mercy of the Wi-Fi in this room right now, so please be patient. This will bring you to our YouTube page. You can watch all kinds of videos. You can watch the most recent Historic District, Conservation. You can even watch the town band. If you're looking for something specific, let's say you're interested in, I don't know, wastewater for some strange reason, you can go to this tab up top called Playlists, and if you scroll down, you will see Wastewater Implementation Committee. You can watch all of the wastewater videos there. They will be in chronological order. So if you are interested on a Saturday night, perhaps binge watching some interesting wastewater material, I would suggest you subscribe to our YouTube page and get caught up. So as you can see, we have July 3rd, July 26th. There is a meeting in this room tomorrow at 8:30 if you're so inclined. All of our videos are posted on YouTube less than 12 hours after they happen. So you can see this meeting tonight, probably by tomorrow afternoon. For those of you that would like to get an alert every single time that Channel 18 posts a video, which is every day, all day, you can hit this subscribe button right here in the top right-hand corner. In addition to the 12 regular boards and committees that we cover, we do fun things like the Harwich Town Band. We do regular updates every month with the Council on Aging, Chamber and Commerce, Community Center, the Cultural Center, Recreation Department. Chris has his own show called Sitting Down with the Town Administrator. I believe he has 44 episodes, and you can actually right here.
But how many likes?
Oh, 30, excuse me.
I don't binge watch them.
38 episodes. So since Chris started, every month he sits down with my assistant Caleb Ledoux and picks a topic and brings on a guest, and it's actually really informative. Here's our cute little opening. So if you're interested, we also do, Chamber of Commerce, Community Preservation. Carolyn comes on once a month. Judy comes on once a month. Eric, it's pretty time intensive. We also have Chase Library updates. Brooks Library comes on, and I even strong-armed the Harwich Board Library, which nobody ever sees anybody from them, and they've been coming on during the summer months to update you guys on what's going on there. Channel 18 wouldn't be possible without my faithful gang, as I like to call them. Jack and Eileen Wyatt, who host our Community Journal show, which is our most popular program next to the Board of Selectmen meetings. We do that every week. We sit down and bring you everything that's happening in the week in Harwich. So if you're interested in that, that's our most popular show. If that does not go off on Thursday, people will call and say, where are Jack and Eileen and where is Community Journal? Joyce Roach is a camera person. I have Ron Armbruster, Dinah Lane, and John Ketchum. Last year, some non-resident taxpayers wandered their way into my office and said, why aren't you filming the town bands anymore? And I said, all right, here's a camera and here's a tripod. You're my newest volunteer. And they were like, wait, what? So now every Tuesday night, I have Jim and Jane Fulton have been filming every single town band concert. So I'd really like to thank them. Caleb Ledoux, and this year I've actually had 3 interns, 2 from Monomoy and 1 from Sturgis. So we're really busy. If you are interested in becoming a year-round resident of Harwich, this is just a little extra here. If you go to this Find It Fast link right here, and you could join a board or committee. So here on this page, after you've caught up on all your selectmen meetings, wastewater meetings, parades, all that fun jazz on the YouTube page, you can see open meeting law, state ethics video and training, our committee vacancy list, which is obviously out of date because it says November 2017. I'll have to write the website lady an angry email about that. You can also see a little tutorial on how you can post your own agendas and minutes. So, any questions?
Thank you.
Well, you were talking about the YouTube feed. Is the Harwich Shellfish Lab song still on the YouTube?
No, you know what? It actually isn't.
Oh, that's terrible.
It is terrible. So when I have a free moment, which isn't very often, I will go down into the community center basement where Channel 18 is hoarding quite a bit of old videos, and I'll put some older stuff on there. So if you actually go to the YouTube page, and if you're really interested in seeing some interesting stuff, we've been putting videos on YouTube for 7.5 years now. There is a big library of information, community events. You can really kind of get the whole cast of characters, if you will. If you go to videos right here, and if you sort by date added oldest, there is History in Harwich and Pictures, which was put together by the late John Roach, who is my volunteer. Harwich Harbors, which is actually very interesting. There's also a little history about the Harwich Garden Club. So you can really go way back. And it's actually worth a watch. It's really interesting. Another thing to note, we did an oral history program a few years back with the museum, and if I could see it, and if this would work. You could go back and watch oral histories, which did not air on Channel 18. They were only airing at the museum. I think if I can find them right here. You can go back and watch some oral histories that were hosted by Eileen Brady, who is a member of the Harwich Historical Society. And this is only half of the ones that we did are right here. So there's a lot of interesting stuff if you had time to go back and look at them and maybe, get yourself acclimated with the town of Harwich.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thanks.
Questions for Jamie? The best part is if you want to watch a committee, the Board of Selectmen, for instance, you can skip the boring parts and get to the part you're interested in. Move next to Chris. You want to talk to us about wastewater?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Christopher Clark, I'm your town administrator here in the community. I'm actually about 4.5 years in, so I've been here for a little bit. Just in terms of the topic that I had to cover tonight is the wastewater. So it's a significant topic. I will try to give it justice, but I have about 5 minutes. I told my staff, so I have to keep that to myself too. In a nutshell, we have the Conservation Law Foundation, which is a law group out of Vermont. Originally, their claim to fame was they sued the EPA to clean up Boston Harbor. So as folks know that are from Mass, they cleaned up Boston Harbor. The next on their hit list was the Cape Cod. So they have filed suit at EPA and want the Cape to be cleaned up. To that end, how do we clean it up? We have worked closely with the DEP, Department of Environmental Protection at the state, as well as the county and the commission, and put together what's called a Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan, CWMP, Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan. What that means for the town of Harwich specifically is about $240 million that it will cost us to do over 40 years in 8 phases. We are on phase 2 right now. Phase 2 is for the cost for the residents, and it's about the average over the 70 years of the program, and in total 40 years to clean up, 30 years for debt service. It would be about $400. This phase 2 is about $150 for an average taxpayer that has a home that's valued at $350,000. So about $150,000 for this phase. It goes as high as $600, and then it averages out about $400. Most people want to know, why are we doing this and what's the element? We have too much nitrogen in the environment. The most productive way to remove nitrogen from the environment is to take the septic systems that you have at your property. The septic system is not very efficient at removing nitrogen. By putting it into a pipe, sending it to a treatment plant, currently we have arrangements with the town of Chatham to have them facilitate cleaning it through their plant. Their plant can actually get up to 95 to 99% removal of nitrogen. So it's a very efficient way to remove it and to protect the environment. In terms of the project that we're on now, as I indicated, we're at phase 2. Phase 2 is basically sewering large parts of East Harwich. And what I want to do, I think we have the images that we could put up on the screen for the areas that we are going to look at sewering.
That's not so.
Oh, we may not. So what I have at the back table, maybe I can have, do you mind maybe passing over a few? We have 2 pieces of literature, and one is we passed out at town meeting that kind of lays out what phase 2 is, what phase 3 is, and then phase 8. So East Harwich is broken into 3 phases. The color that is pink in color is the area right now that we are looking at sewering. I would encourage that you look at that. We are not sewering the entirety of the town, not even the entirety of East Harwich. So if you look in the second brochure material, for those that have a greater interest, it's probably about 12 pages in total, and it goes into the plan overall. It goes over the 40-year time horizon. So one of the things that people will see you did have some of the images. If you can blow that up. One of the things that we're currently engaged in, town meeting approved the project, about $25 million for this phase. I do have the timeline of what we're going to cover. No, you can go back to that map, Jamie. So on this, you'll see that there are letters that go with it. It will say B161. As part of the funding, we're still in the design phases. We hope to have all the design elements complete by October. We will submit to the state for state revolving loan funds. What that means to us is if we went out into the traditional marketplace to borrow the money, we would borrow the money at 4 to 5% interest. By going through the state revolving loan fund, we can actually borrow money at 2%. And when you're talking about $25 million, borrowing it at 2% is a lot better than borrowing it at 4 or 5. The even better news is that because this is a nitrogen reduction program, and we have partnered with the town of Chatham to use their facility, we're considered a regional nitrogen reduction project, which means that we have the option, and this is up to the state and up to their available funding, to go as low as 0%. So we have the opportunity, and all the modeling we have done is at the 2% number. Currently, and this summer, if you see, you'll see these markings in the street every 300 feet for this project. The state requires that we do what they call test borings. We actually drill down. If a site of the pipe is going to be 10 feet deep, we're expected to drill down 15 feet to actually see what the material looks like, get a profile to see if it's sand, if it's clay, if it's rock. The good thing about Cape Cod, I've worked off Cape for quite a while. A lot of clay and a lot of boulders on other parts of Mass. Cape Cod, thankfully, in this case, has a lot of sand. So it will hopefully make the digging a little bit easier, or hopefully a lot easier, and that should hopefully help with the cost. So this summer, there will be a rigging crew going around, literally digging those holes and testing those. That will occur through most of the summer. At the end of the summer, we will do sections of Route 39 and 137. Because of those are major roadways, we want to lay off those until the summer season is over. So we are planning on laying that off. I realize as I talk to people, not everyone's a map person, so we do have it laid out too, just on the actual roads that will be covered. If we can go to, we have also in here, one of the questions that frequently comes up is what is the timeline? So as I've kind of alluded to in that, we will be submitting to the SRF State Revolving Loan Fund in October of this year. Final design during this fall and winter. The bidding will be out for the beginning of 2019. Construction, this whole area is estimated to be about 2 years. At the conclusion of the construction, once all the pipes are done, it's 8 miles of pipe, 6 pump stations. Once all that work is done and we can send the flow to the town of Chatham, folks will get a notice in the mail that says you have 2 years to connect up. So one of the things I have on these slides, as you go through, you'll see that there's a section of town responsibility. So the 25 million gets the pipe in the street, and what's called a lateral, the pipe that goes from the middle of the street to your property line. So if you have an interest to know where that pipe should go now, which we will be asking that sooner than later, Megan Eldridge is in the crowd too. She's the health director here in town. We do have most, if not all, of the 650 properties that are included in this phase where we show where the septic system is. In the town of Chatham, which is about 10 years ahead of us, about 90 to 95% of the people that hooked up actually took the existing piping for their septic system and plugged into it there. So to that end, we do have the image that shows town responsibility and property owner responsibility and the costs related to that. We have also received kind of interest from folks, and this is be the last slide. Okay, well, Mr. Clark, I don't really want to know or understand how my septic system works. Who can I contact to help me design and understand all this? So we do have a listing, which is the next slide, of folks that currently do Title V inspections, and we do have some of this on our cable channel now available. So if you want to look up somebody to walk through and get a better understanding of what your obligation is, we have met with several of the engineers that do this. Any PE in Massachusetts can be used to get input on it, but I would encourage folks to start thinking about it. If you're in the area, and in the highlighted area, you definitely want to pay attention to that. If you're not, then that means you're not part of the 50% that is being sewered. I think that was actually
That was less than 5.
questions if there's.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions for Chris? Thanks again, Chris. We'll move then on to Carol Koppel to talk about our financial position of Harwich.
Good evening. My name's Carol Capola. I'm the finance director here for the town of Harwich. In the finance department is comprised of your assessor, who's deciding how much we're going to assess you in taxes and exemptions and things of that nature. We have the treasurer's office and the collector's office that works under the finance department, and then of course all of us that are crunching numbers and paying bills and paying payroll. So I wanted to go over a few of the positive trends that we've seen in the past year. The town has been diligently building reserves and reducing in order to reduce long-term liabilities. In addition to that, the town has had some rating calls with Standard & Poor's, in which it was reaffirmed a AA+ rating for long-term bonds. In addition to that, we have some short-term borrowing that we do for some projects, and the town received the highest rating for short-term borrowing. This was the past year was the first time that the town prepared a CAFR, which is a comprehensive annual financial report. and the town received an award for that, CAFR. That can be found on the town's website. You can have access to it there. And it essentially replaces the basic financial statements that you would see before. It includes some important information about trends for the community and demographics and things of that nature. And then finally, town meeting in May approved authorized budgets for the town, and I'll go over that with you briefly. So this chart shows you how the town has been diligently putting money away for OPEB, which we call other post-employment benefits. This is a liability that's coming due on the town. We put away stabilization funds, and then we have at the end of the fiscal year from turnbacks and excess revenue that we've collected, what we call free cash. And so you can see that the modest trend here we're looking to get to 20%, and so that is one of the goals, our financial goals. This year, in fiscal 19, at town meeting, it was approved to fund OPEB at an additional $825,000, stabilization at $630,000. So you'll see those numbers start to go up. As I mentioned, we had a rating call with Standard & Poor's. The town sold bonds this past year, about $12.5 million in bonds. A lot of that had to do with Saquatucket Harbor, in addition to wastewater. So the town, again, received a AA+ rating. And here are some very important factors that went into that rating call. The strong economy of the town of Harwich, the strong reserves that we have strong liquidity, and the management team here is also strong. The town also sold short-term funding for projects such as the fire station. Cranberry Valley is undergoing a capital project right now, and then some road maintenance work. As I mentioned before, the short-term bonds were the highest rated that Standard & Poor's gives. We took $7.4 million in short-term bonds. The short-term bonds, the net interest was 1.6%. The long-term bonds, the net interest was 2.79%. So a comprehensive annual financial report, it takes a lot of work to put that together. There are 3 different parts of that report. One is an introductory section, and that introductory section just highlights, the current trends in the town of Harwich, the forward thinking of the town of Harwich, and what initiatives the town will be undertaking. It also has what we used to call your basic financial statements. So these are audited financial statements with an opinion from an external independent auditor. And then the third section has a statistical section. It's 10 years of statistical data that goes into that report. This report will be continued to be prepared on an annual basis, and we look forward to your questions. If you decide you'd like to review it, you can, again, access it right on the town's website. May 2000, we had town meeting. The town meeting voted a budget. This represents the operating budget for the town. This shows you by major category the funding that was approved, and then the increase from the prior year or decrease. The overall increase of this budget was 7%. The major components of that increase were, number 1, debt. So we have long-term debt that we've sold bonds, and that is at a $2.1 million increase in the budget. The other areas of significant increases are education. That was a $900,000 increase. And then the town operating budget, which was another component, was almost 900,000 as well. Health insurance represented about a $180,000 increase, and that's one of those rising costs that we're all experiencing. Whoops. Okay. Any questions?
I was going to say, we've done a great job of being transparent, but you sort of messed that up for me.
Here, can I turn it back on?
Are there any questions for Carol?
There.
If not, thank you, Carol. We next move to discussion of the cultural districts, I guess by the older Cindy Williams after her birthday.
Oh.
And I already thought she hated
Cindy?
me. Now she's really gonna
Cindy,
hate me.
you want me to whack him?
Executive
Well, would you
Director
like a
of our
little
Chamber,
bookends?
Executive Director of the Chamber of Commerce, and Charlene, who's our town planner.
You just stole my introduction. Yes, I'm Charlene Greenhalgh, the town planner, and I have with me Cindy Williams, who is the director of the Chamber of Commerce. And we are here this evening to provide you with an update on the Harwich Cultural District's designation.
Next. The last time we were all here was February 26th, and the town of Harwich, the Harwich Chamber of Commerce, the Harwich Cultural Council, and the Massachusetts Cultural Council signed the Harwich Cultural Compact. In the spirit of partnership and public service, understanding that we serve the people of our Commonwealth and that they deserve the richest and most diverse cultural life possible. You're slipping.
Who's slipping? Oh, I'm not turning slides. I'm slipping. My apologies here. Cindy and I were both designated by the Board of Selectmen to serve as liaisons to the Mass Cultural Council for the creation of cultural districts here in the town. Harwich was actually chosen by the Mass Cultural Council as one of the only towns in the Commonwealth to participate in the current Cultural Compact pilot program. So that was really exciting for us. We do envision that we will have two districts, one in the Harwich Center and one in Harwichport Center. Cindy and I, we meet just about weekly to plan and look at and go through the application, which is actually quite cumbersome, but we're getting there. We attend as many cultural council meetings that are put on by the state as we possibly can to gain more education in this area.
Recently, thanks to some hard work by our local Harwich Cultural Council, we received a $10,000 grant that Charlene and I wrote for this district project that we're going forward with. The money will be used for the creation of district maps for both of our districts, creation of a website, district signs, which we'll need for in each district, upgrades. We had asked Carolyn Carey, who, as many of you know, manages and takes care of our our community center, but also has taken on the task and done an amazing job with the cultural center. We asked her for a kind of little hit list of what she would wish for, so we are going to be also using some of the monies towards the auditorium upgrade and cafeteria, hopefully becoming a culinary incubator here in Harwich. Also, the cultural district has a partnership with these two districts. We will have town representatives, local cultural council, cultural organizations, local artists, and business. This is not just cultural and arts, it's also an economic development initiative as well. And then for-profit creative business, and of course, the Chamber of Commerce.
The next steps, if I change that, the next steps that we're looking towards are holding two different stakeholder meetings in the month of September. We will be inviting various cultural and business partners to share their ideas on how they envision the districts. We will also be holding a public meeting input here with the Board of Selectmen, at which point we hope the Selectmen will sign a resolution. The Selectmen will then appoint each member to that cultural partner district. We don't expect that to happen in September, but that would happen shortly thereafter. We would then finalize district boundary maps, and we would make our final application, which is due by March, but we hope to have that actually done by January. As Charlene mentioned, we are envisioning 2 districts. The Harwich Center Cultural District will start at White House Field and then end at the Harwich Cultural Center with a lot of things in between. We'll get to that slide in a second. The Harwich Port Cultural District will start at or end at 451 Route 28, which is right next to the Dairy Queen. It is an art gallery, and then go as far as, and hopefully will be including the newly renovated South Harwich Meeting House. What this first map shows is just, it's a working map of the Harwich Center Cultural District. Cindy will go through some of the specifics for that district, what it entails and what it provides. There's actually a lot that goes on in this very small area of Harwich Center. As I mentioned, we'll start at the White House Field, and you can all read this. It's kind of tiny, sorry. There is, as Charlene said, so much that we have from a cultural aspect in both of the districts. But White House Field, the Community Center, the Monomoy Regional High School, the Cape Cod Rail Trail, Brooks Park, Brooks Public Library, the Harwich Center Historic District, First Congregational Church, Island Pond Cemetery, the Pilgrim Masonic Lodge, Brooks Academy, and Harwich Historical Society, the Kroll Barn, Cape Cod Theater Company, and ending at the Cultural Center on Sisson. The right-hand side is a variety of the various events that take place in Harwich Center. The Mariners baseball game, which I believe, I'm not sure though because I haven't been paying attention to them, sorry, I believe they're in the playoffs and might be playing tonight. The Harwich Cranberry Festival, the Community Center cultural events, Monomoy High School cultural events, Music Gazebo at Brooks Park, Arts and Crafts Brooks Park, Brooks Library cultural events, Harwich Farmers Market, First Congregational Church, the Arboretum in Island Pond, cemetery tours. When we were doing this, we found that we have many women authors that are buried in the cemetery, so that's also quite interesting and will be a great part of this as well. The Farmers Market and the Harwich Cultural Center events. And in the Harwich Port area, as Cindy alluded to, does start at what we hope is the South Harwich Meeting House, which is in the upper right-hand corner, would get down Route 28 all the way to the 480, Route 480? 451. 451, Route 28, and encompasses a great deal, and Cindy gets the task of going through the list. So we start with 820 Main Gallery, South Harwich Meeting House, the Saquatucket Harbor Artisan Shacks, Witchmere Harbor Overlook, Christchurch Episcopal, 74 Bank Gallery, Harwich Port Library, Lutz Gallery, Reciprocity Artisan Market, the Nines Gallery, Dr. Gravity, Guild of Harwich Artists, Port Framing Gallery, LeClaire Photography, Pilgrim Congregational Church, the newly developed, and I hope everyone here has been able to catch one of the concerts, the Cape Cod Chamber Orchestra, which is part of, or is housed at the Pilgrim Congregational Church, Doan Park, Glued, and Cross Strip Gallery, as well as the 451 Make Art Gallery and School. The events on the right-hand side, Wednesday nights, Port Summer Nights, which this year many of our residents last year had asked via social media to extend it. So this year we've extended it as far as the first Wednesday in September. So September 5th will be the last Port Summer Nights. That one will be at an earlier time, 5 to 8, due to it getting darker. The Hometown Parade will be September 9th this year, and it is also Harwich Port home to Art in the Park, the Village Crafters Craft Fairs, Fall for Harwich month-long events, Christmas in Harwich weekend, Harwich Conservation Trust events, the many gallery events that are throughout Harwich Port, the Pilgrim Congregational concerts and events, Christchurch Episcopal events, Passport to Arts and Culture of Harwich, and the Artisan Sacrifice Sale. And finally, we would like to thank the Board of Selectmen and obviously the Harwich Cultural Council for all their assistance and support in this great endeavor to our community. This really is for everybody in the community. Cindy and I have really hated working together. I'm totally kidding. It's been an absolute pleasure working with this woman. She is just a wealth of information and is like that little Energizer bunny. She just keeps going, and she keeps me going, so. That's our dog and pony.
Any questions?
Can
The
you repeat
question
the
was,
question, please? Yeah.
yeah, the question was how we were invited to participate. Actually, this is a kind of a wonderful story. Within the town's operating budget, the town does provide additional funds above and beyond what the Mass Cultural Council provides to local cultural folks here in town. It can be all kinds of different cultural art organizations or individuals who are seeking funds through the Cultural Council, and it's a local application that you make to the Harwich Cultural Council. But the town also ponies up some money for that, and they found that very intriguing at the state level. So in part because of that, we were invited as the only town. There are several cities that are participating this year.
There are 5 cities and 1 town, but also what they found unique and wonderful was what the town did with the old Harwich Middle School, turning it into a cultural center. They've noticed since meeting with us and since signing this compact that other towns and cities are looking to do the same because of the success. So again, a much thanks to the board for letting that continue, because that was a great thing that happened this spring. So thank you to that.
Certainly. Can you have it please use the microphone?
I have to ask the obvious question in the room since I started here. Barbara Burgo again, curator of the Harwich Cape Verdean Museum. Why were we not included in anything?
The beginning, this is all in the beginning stages right now. The Mass State Cultural Council came down, signed the compact with the town and the Cultural Center as well as the Chamber. And now the next meetings that will take place will be in September, and these will be all of the stakeholders meetings. These are going to be people that will help develop the 2 districts as we go through the process. So at that point, the Cultural Center, as well as the museum and other partners throughout the 2 districts will be invited to one of the 2 meetings, depending on which location you are located in.
So we're not quite there yet.
In October, I don't know if it was 18 or the other local TV station was invited to the Harwich Cultural Center, and we were asked if we wanted to get on that program, to be there. And I took the day off of work. And I waited 3 hours, and when they came to me, when I saw Erica, she said they were gone. And I said, well, I waited at the Harwich Cape Verdean Museum, and she said they ran out of tape. Nothing has ever happened for the museum.
Sounds like a concern, but what I hear is that you'll be included in the next step when they have the stakeholder meetings in town. So we'll keep track of that.
To Barbara's point, I'm not quite sure what that event was. I know it wasn't part of this. This Cultural Council and Cultural District was signed in February here in this room with the state, the town, and various other partners. But the next phase will embrace everyone in the town. So we look forward to having all of those people.
Thank you, Cindy. Everyone will be included at that point. There was another question.
Actually, I was going to ask the same question Barbara did.
Okay, good.
It seems like a natural that for cultural initiatives that the Cape Verdean Museum would be included.
There are steps to this, like anything, and that the next step is the September, where the stakeholders then get involved, and that absolutely, we're very excited about that. And for any of you that did see this year's Harwich magazine, it was all about the Harwich culture that we have. So we're really excited to be having this go on.
Except the Cape Verdean.
We ran out of a lot of pages, and it has nothing to do with that.
Okay.
We're going to keep everything going.
We'll move on. Thank you very much, all the presenters. I hope you're as impressed as I am with all the activities we have going on in town. And I also want to say that, as a town and as a Board of Selectmen, we have sometimes very heated debates on subjects, whether it's, well, you name a subject, we can have a heated debate about it. But what a great place to be if starting with this base with such a well-run town and all the activities, so we can have heated debates basically around the margins and how we can improve. That's a great position to be in. Are there any other questions or comments? Please.
Good evening. My name's Gary Moody. My wife spoke earlier. She was born and raised in Harwich. You could tell from my accent that I am not from these parts. I'm a retired civil trial lawyer from Florida, and our municipal government set up a little bit differently down there, so I apologize ahead of time if I dwell into an area that may be problematic. I did have a question regarding the budgeting process. The young lady who was up here earlier, I believe her name was Carol, showed the, I guess, the annual budget up there. Typically, citizens have some input in the budgeting process. Non-registered or non-residents, which equates to non-voters, have much less political capital to spend in that area, but there is input on the budgeting process, far less input on what the money actually gets spent for. So my first question is whether or not, if I go onto the website and I can pull up the budget, can I also look up and see how well this budget has been followed once adopted in past years? And is that information available?
I'll let Chris or Carol respond to
Yeah,
that.
we do have, we do a 5-year projection each year to see where we have been or where we're going, and we also look back, so you can see where we've been. What those numbers, we also have the auditing reports online, so you can see from that, and then Standard & Poor's does a pretty good review of how the town has operated. So you can see that, you know, I think we're fundamentally strong from those professional standards, and that's all available online for you to look at.
Would I be correct in assuming the budgeting process for the town, or the financial income from the town is generated primarily by both ad valorem taxes and sales tax, sharing revenues of sales taxes? How's the
Yeah,
town?
I'm actually, I've been an administrator for about 28 years, and I did do some out-of-state work, one in the Midwest, and I know that we had our own local sales tax. Massachusetts does not have that. So the revenue sources that we have is primarily property tax, especially particularly for a town like Harwich, property tax, and then we do receive some state aid. We did do the schools separated off. One thing that maybe you're familiar with, I'm not that familiar with Florida, but I know when I was out in the Midwest that the education had their own tax rate, their own mill levy. We don't do that. It's all part of one local government. And actually, regional government or county government, which is big in other parts of the country, quite honestly, is not as significant here in Massachusetts.
Are sales taxes in Massachusetts the same? I'm sure in Massachusetts they apply to the same products and so on, but are they at the same rate throughout the state?
Yes.
Mostly, the state does have a uniform rate. Individual local cities and towns can put an additional amount on hotels and meals. So depending upon the local option, if they adopted a local option, we have adopted those local options, so the hotel tax and the meals tax are a little bit higher than what the state average is.
Have you ever adopted local options for things such as road construction and maintenance and that type of thing?
That's a great question. Actually, the way the state works in Massachusetts is we have what's called Chapter 90. It's a section of law. They collect a gas tax, so that's built in every time you pump gas. There's a certain amount that goes to the federal government that pays for the TIP program that you mentioned, what we talked about earlier. And also, the state has that where they collect tax from the gas, and they give it back to us in the form of Chapter 90. In our case, we spend about $1.4 million a year on roadway. $700,000 comes from that gas tax, if you would, through Chapter 90 from the state, and then the town we appropriate $700,000 the other half.
Florida and some other states have constitutional limits on the amount of sales taxes that can be collected and on millage increases and that type of thing with regard to the tax base. Florida and other states have been quite adept at getting around those by having special sales taxes on your county can adopt a sales tax of an extra 1%, for example, for road construction and maintenance. Well, where the uproar comes is that they collect taxes from the citizens for those, as you do here. Then it gets spent in the general budget, not on other things, and then they go to the public, the politicians go to the public and say, give us another 1% and we'll spend it on the roads, and of course they don't. That doesn't seem to be a problem up here. I'm trying to find out what that might be. Is that an issue here?
Well,
Go ahead, Chris.
just under Mass law in 1983, they adopted Proposition 2.5, which caps the amount of property tax that the town can raise each year. So it is capped at 2.5 plus new growth. So as the town grows, and our average has been about 3.5. There are some mechanisms that are in that law that allow for you to go above that. There's 3 of them primarily that are used. One of them is a capital exclusion. If you want to buy a fire truck and pay for it in 1 year, you have the ability to do that. So you raise the property tax for that 1 year to pay for the truck. The other, which we have used extensively, particularly for the wastewater, is the debt exclusion. So that way, if you borrow $1 million and pay it off over 10 years, the taxes go up for that 10 years and then goes down at the end of that debt exclusion. And then the third, which isn't used very successfully very often, is what's called a general override, which takes that Proposition 2.5 and allows you to build on top of that, and that becomes part of your new base for the next year. So you can actually go above and beyond. I've been the administrator for, as I said, about 4.5 years. Last time it was used here, I think it was 2005, was the time that the override was, oh, there was one subsequent to in 14, in 12 or 14.
Yeah, 2014, when we raised.
It was 5 and 14, fiscal year 5 and 14.
So if I hear you correctly, you have caps on the assessment, on the ad valorem assessment value, how much it can go up each year, but you don't necessarily have caps on the millage.
Well, actually, it's opposite. We don't have a cap on the amount of value that goes up, but we do on the amount of money we can raise each year.
Okay.
So the 2.5 cap is on the amount of money we can raise each year.
And so,
Let me suggest that possibly you two can talk offline.
I'll
Because we
hush,
have a
thank you.
long agenda, and we'll move
Sorry,
this
Mr.
on. It's okay. Don, you had a
Just trying to be
Yeah,
comment?
I didn't want him to sit down without making 2 points really clear, going through the gobbledygook of the government here. The first one is, we're a line item state. If something is budgeted and approved at a town meeting, and somebody leaves a department, we can't take that money and shift it over somewhere else because it's specifically earmarked to the line item that it was voted for. Second one is...
You see, Florida's not limited by that little requirement.
You're welcome to move here.
No, we don't have a sales tax, an income tax.
But the other thing is that when, as Chris alluded to, there are debt exclusions and other things that are technical, but all you need to know about them is they come via an article to the town meeting where the townspeople get together. They have to approve it at the town meeting for that purpose. They can't take the money for the firehouse and move it over to the schools. And then it has to go to the ballot box to approve the borrowing that the town meeting approved of. So it's a generally open process, but the money has to stick with where it was approved.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Don. Let's go ahead and move on. Thanks for your question, though. I'm not sure whether we're happy we're in Florida or not. Move on to the consent agenda.
Can I ask that the minutes for
Is there any
July
Does anyone,
9th?
excuse me, we have another question here.
I just wanted to ask
Sure.
what the status was on the tech school, what's going on with that? 'Cause I haven't heard anything lately.
Well, Chris well, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I do serve on the, I volunteer a lot for different things. So I am on the school building committee for the tech school. They are in the process of doing final design, and they will be out to bid. So that, I believe, is a 2-year construction window. If you go to Cape Tech, they have on their website the project status, so you can click on that and get the minutes and get an update.
Any idea what kind of cost that is to the taxpayers of the town of Harwich?
I want to say it's a little bit complicated from the perspective that I believe it's about $110 million. About 40 to 45% though is funded by the state, and then it's divvied up over the 10 towns in the district.
By population.
And then by
of the
population,
12
so 12 towns, and
By
then each
enrollment.
town gets our enrollment is about 7.7%. So that's where we would pay 7.7% of that portion.
Okay, thank you.
Ed, do you remember what it was?
It's actually the town's portion of the tech school building cost is going to be relatively similar to, for the taxpayer, what we're paying for the new high school. So,
Okay, thank you. I almost missed that question. Are there any other questions or comments? Move on to the consent agenda and.
I'd like you to pull July 9th minutes out.
Okay, and I'd like to pull D.
okay. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to present the consent agenda and move approval of the items thereon, including approval of minutes, June 25th, 2018, regular session. Approved request by Democratic Town Committee to appoint Margaret Rose as election worker. And C, sign primary election warrant for September 4th, 2018.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
None, so they've been approved. Don, would you like
Yeah,
now?
as to the minutes, I'm gonna ask that we could table them until I talk with Ann. Just to remind everybody, I precursored my comment about the Pet Palooza with the, I'm probably gonna get outvoted, but, and it shows here as a unanimous vote, which it wasn't. So
We'll
I
bring
want her
that
to
back.
verify that.
Okay. I asked to pull D, John, I asked to pull D on the, not that I object to it, I think it's a very strong, it's just the waterways. Every time something comes up, I just wanted you to give a quick explanation so we can move ahead.
Yes, sir, absolutely. So I'm asking to increase by one, a 40-foot commercial slip. Our intent, I've had this discussion many times, was to try to increase at least one commercial slip when we increased the 11 slips in the marina, if possible. I hadn't committed until I looked to see kind of how the flow of the marina and all the various slips and the flow of the marina and the new design came to be. So what has happened recently, we had one commercial slip that was vacated, given up. And so we went to our wait list. We have a separate 40-foot commercial slip wait list that we maintain. There's about 34 fishermen on that. We went to the wait list, and so the next person on that wait list actually has a pretty significant boat. It's called Midnight Hour, and it's got a 24-foot width, beam width, and it's not something that can fit at Saquatucket Harbor. And he has come up on the wait list a couple of times, and we haven't been able to accommodate him. So one of the things that we have tried, and we've put in, I've monitored it for about 2 or 3 weeks now, we've put him on the south side of the Witchmere Pier. Right behind, we have one at the end. It's a lobster boat. And so I wanted to see clearances, make sure we got plenty of room for other fishermen to offload their catch and use the offloading area as it was designed for. Clearances from the neighboring home there. And so I think it's working. And so my intent would be to make that a permanent slip for the Midnight Hour, and then the extra slip that I'd like to, or the extra permit that I'm asking for would go to the next person on the wait list, and that would be over at Saquatucket Harbor.
Okay. Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
I may have had the only question on that, so does anyone care to make a motion to move ahead?
Is the motion
Motion to
amend the harbor management plan?
approve the request.
Approve the request for
Approve the
Harbor- to
request
add
from
one
Harbor
additional
Master to add
40.
one additional.
Okay. And his request is to amend the harbor management plan by
No.
changing the number of,
No.
No, it's
It
just-
will require me to change, because it lists in the harbor management plan, we have 27 permits. It will now be 28, and we will make that change.
okay,
But
yeah.
really what I'm asking is your approval to increase
Okay.
that.
Mhm.
Is that a motion then, Ed?
Well, I'm still not clear which way you want to make the motion, or somebody else.
Okay.
So John, I'd move that we approve the request from the harbor master to add one additional 40-foot commercial slip Class A permits.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Or Don?
My question is, it's kind of like what Ed was heading towards. On your own, you can't change the harbor management plan, can you? I mean, it requires coming back to the Board of Selectmen. So inferentially, you're actually asking to do both things.
Well, under our current harbor management plan, if you look at, the first section in the harbor management plan, which is defined as purpose, you as the Board of Selectmen who produced the harbor management plan, it defines that I have the authority under State Statute 102-91A and Code of Federal Regulations to adopt regulations for permitted moorings, stationings of vessel, including commercial vessels lying within territorial jurisdiction of the town of Harwich. So there are certain statutory authorities that the harbor master has, one of which is commercial permits. And so that's why it is on the consent agenda, because I have the authority as the harbor master, and it was agreed when I first got here that anytime I made a change, I would come to the Board of Selectmen to notify you of what we're doing and to get your approval. So that's why it's on the consent agenda, and that's where I'm at.
As an amendment to the plan. My only point was, it is an amendment to the plan. I'm not sure why you wouldn't accept a motion that says that this is approved by amending the plan to include this.
I'll do it however you want. I'm not sure I understand the distinction, but
John, I think your intent is to go back to the Waterways Committee, do the formal change, and probably come back for a formal change?
I went to the Waterways, so.
That's been approved already.
I went to the Waterways. It was an agenda item. They supported my proposal to increase a commercial permit. And so that's what I'm looking to do. So if you think it needs to be in a different manner, I'm willing to do that, but.
I'll add and amend the current Waterways Management Plan. To reflect it.
I'll accept that as in my second.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
Next, we have a public hearing on the building department fees. Ed, you want to? I'll read it.
I hit a key and I made it disappear.
Easier said than done.
There we go. The Harwich Board of Selectmen notice of public hearing, building department fees, Monday, August 6th, 2018. Harwich Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on Monday, August 6th, 2018, no earlier than 6:30 p.m. During their regularly scheduled meeting, this hearing will be held in the Don B. Giffen Room located at Town Hall, 732 Main Street, Harwich, for the purpose of reviewing proposed amendments to the building department fees. All members of the public having an interest in this topic are cordially invited to attend the public hearing and provide information and testimony relevant to these proposals. Additional information is available at the office of the town administrator, signed the Harwich Board of Selectmen, July 19th, 2018.
Okay. Thank you, Ed. Please. Who's going, Chris, are you going to start, or?
Actually, I'm going to defer to Ray,
Ray?
The building commissioner, to do the overview of the request that he has submitted.
Okay. Ray Chesley, building commissioner, town of Harwich. And you should have some papers in your packet here, I believe. And what we did was we compared building permit rates for 10 or 11 of the surrounding towns to us here. And we compared them based on a average type house. We just did a mock-up type house that's a 2,500 square foot house with a full basement. and the description of it is on this, on the paperwork that we gave to you. So we compared what the building permit fees would be from each town for that particular mock house, which we considered an average type property. And when we did that, we found each town figures their building permit fees in a different way. So by having this model and applying their fees to a standard model, we thought we could get to a fair average of what fees are in the surrounding towns. And when we did that, it turned out that the fees for Harwich are 57.2% lower than the average fees of the surrounding towns, building permit fees. And so I'm coming to you to present this information to see if you would consider raising the fees. There's another, my desire here is that we could possibly raise the fees to 57%, that we're low, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer it. Boy.
I guess I'll start, Ray, on a couple of questions. I was looking at the other direction. I was looking at the numbers, and we're going to, you're suggesting a 40, 60% increase in fees. Now, I guess, which drives me, which is a pretty hefty jump in fees. My two questions then are, how does that relate to your expenses, and when's the last time you increased fees?
Well, the last time we increased fees in Harwich was, that I could find, was fiscal year 2012. And we increased fees by 5%. And that was to cover, I believe, the computer costs and implementing software systems that were going to go on at that time. I don't know when you raised them previous to that.
The second part of that was related to expenses. In other words, do we need more fees
to cover our costs?
Cover our costs.
Well, yes, I believe we do. Although I'm not privileged to all the costs that it costs us to run a building department, because there's a lot of variables. But it appears to me that we do need a fee increase to cover the costs.
Okay, Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ray, I'm sorry you just happened to be the first person up with this, so don't take personal offense. But I got to tell you, in a race to see how much we could charge relative to other towns, I'm not in that race to win. The first thing I got to say is, Larry was bringing it up, but it's not a suggestion. It's the state law. Fees have to be based on the cost to the town of providing those services. So all of this other stuff is window dressing. You really have to go into those variables that you were talking about. You got to talk about a full-time equivalent spends hours doing this at $22 an hour. When you get done with the whole equation of what that permit has by itself through your own efforts and your office efforts, then you can crank in some overhead costs for managing your efforts. But it can't start from building the penthouse and working your way down to the foundation. It has to start with, what does it cost us? So all of this other stuff is pretty cool looking on a chart, but it doesn't mean a thing to me if we can't sustain this based on the true cost of the town.
Okay, well, I'll have to do some more work to get the true cost of the town, because I'm not privileged to all of those figures, but we can certainly do that and come back.
Chris, you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I appreciate that, and we will probably bring that back and get that material for you. Just a couple things, though, just for folks at home that may be listening to this. The chart that we have shows several towns from Brewster to Truro, And we're not trying to be the number one. I think the one thing I think I've heard from this board and the entire time that I've been here is we don't want to be the lowest in terms of costs. We also don't want to be the highest, so give us something in the average. So the 57% certainly is a big number, but that just gets us into the ballpark with others. So, you know, with this change, there's only 2 other towns that would be significantly low. So the average is fairly consistent with the difference of Sandwich and Dennis being a little bit lower than the others. So we are trying to get to that. In terms of, I think really Carol and I will have to kind of dig in and see. I don't believe that there's enough in the fee increase here, even with this, to totally offset his direct costs, let alone his indirect costs. But we can provide that to the board to give you a better sense for, you know, that. This is a fee that's within the general fund, though. It's not necessarily a fee that is enterprise account or something of that nature. So it is a little bit different. But we can certainly dig that information up and provide that to have that backup information for the board.
Just one comment. I would certainly appreciate that, because one thing is sort of interesting about living in on this area of the Cape. We're a closed system, and we tend to want to do all our fee and tax and everything by comparing to the number of towns. And I can just picture every town doing the same survey and saying, well, Harwich is now a little bit ahead of us, so we need to catch up with Harwich. And all of a sudden, we're not paying attention to the fundamentals of what we need the money for. And so I'd like to, and I'm like Don, I don't want to pick on you because you're first, but I want to be sure we're not in that round robin where we're comparing always to the same 2 or 3 towns, because I bet they're doing the same thing. But Ed?
Well,
oh, excuse me.
Well, I will say that as part of the analysis, for each town, I put next to that what fiscal year they last raised their fees, so that you can see that we're not particularly in sync with any group of towns. They all raised them at different times, and all looked at them at different times.
Ed?
Well, following what the comment Don made about the relationship between the fees and the cost of providing the service, if what's being proposed doesn't cover the cost of providing the service, then I think we need to be recommending a higher increase. And the challenge, however, in setting fees in an activity like building is in one year where you have a number of large projects come through, you collect a huge amount, and you don't necessarily increase your costs. The inspectors make do, running their tails off, covering it, and then the next year, there may be a slowdown, and you bring in less than what it costs to provide. I know in the year where we collected the building inspection fee from the high school, which was, I think, $135,000, we didn't hire 2 more inspectors by any means. We kept going with what we had. But you need to sort of take that look over years, what our average costs are, and set the revenue goal on the fees to bring in that amount.
So that just increase your workload, looking over a couple of years to against that.
Right. Yes, you're right. There are a number of variables in the process. And I chose this model to try to simplify it, and that was probably the wrong approach. So.
Don?
Yeah, I hear what Ed said, but I caution you, it doesn't say that you can prorate everything out to the average cost of anything. It says when you charge somebody, it's got to be based on the cost of you providing them the service, not your office being covered for a particular year. So it doesn't impress me that the school got a ride that year, and that you may have spent a lot of time doing that. It's the cost of providing the service for a permit to a person, not the office.
Well, okay. I don't want to get in a strong debate on this.
That's the law.
Well, it's true, you know, you have to allocate the revenue you're collecting in such a way that the person paying a fee for a roof inspection is not paying for somebody who's getting a framing inspection on a 25,000 square foot building. I mean, you know, you have to, the inspection fees need to be structured in such a way so they're paying, the person getting the inspection is paying for what they're getting. But the total of it needs to come to paying the cost of operating the inspection service.
Okay, it's not a perfect world, but possibly you can come back with some more clarification to increase our comfort, and we'll move ahead.
We may want to just, I guess I would suggest, since it's a public hearing, that we just continue the
We'll
public
continue
hearing
the
to
public
August
hearing.
20th.
That
and try
sounds
to see
good.
what
Does that
additional
give you enough
information
time?
we can get.
Okay,
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray.
thank you, Ray. Next is new business. Request by Perks to extend the starting time on weekday entertainment license to 11:30 a.m. and on Sunday entertainment license to 1 p.m. This year from Perks to,
Hello.
I know you gave us quite a bit of documentation, but if you can explain it briefly here.
Yeah, I didn't really provide anything other than an email to Ann. My name's Taylor Powell. I'm owner of Perks, operator of Perks, manager, bathroom attendant, you name it, down at Perks. I guess I'm here because I was understanding when I flew up and went to all these meetings about music permits that they were all the same. Recently, it's become to my attention that people have changed their starting times. I thought it was limited to the 6 to 10 p.m. I think there was a big discussion. We had 3 different public hearings about these permits and the verbiage in them, and I thought that was the case. Well, it turns out it's not the case, that other establishments in town have changed their start times, and I just feel like if they're able to do it, that we should be treated the same, and we should be able to do it. I think that's only fair. In that being said, doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to have live music before my 6 to 10 p.m. times. I just want to be treated the same as others in town. That's all. But I guess I have a misunderstanding of the bylaw. I don't know if I should read the bylaw out loud or we should read the bylaw, but
Well, I think that Chris maybe can.
Yeah,
indicate
I
some-
think that the board policy that they came to after several meetings
Right.
was that it was a 10 o'clock was kind of the hard stop at the end of the night. And then, I don't remember which board member, but I think a board member did say, depending upon the needs of each individual business, they could determine the start time. So there was flexibility, at least in my recollection, to start times were kind of a business decision of each individual business, whether they wanted to have a lunch crowd or an afternoon crowd or an evening crowd. It was really going to be an operational decision of each business. But the 10 o'clock was trying to work with the neighbors to keep the volume down.
Understood.
It wasn't so much at the earlier start time.
Understood, which is exactly my next point and why I'm here. We don't want to break any rules this year. We've really been watching, staying tight with the live music. We stop it early every time. I'm walking out in the parking lot. I'm trying to think what is plainly audible. If there is, can we hear it? I approach officers that are monitoring the area. Hey, how's it sound? How's it look? We're doing this every night. We set timers with the musicians. We set timers with our staff. I put 5 alarms on my cell phone. We're not going past 10. My problem is some of the verbiage in this, and I don't know if maybe we can get clarification now that I know you guys have spent a lot of time on this. I'll try to keep it short about this. But there's always been a light background speaker noise in town historically. Like it's always been allowed whether you're a retail shop or you're a restaurant, okay? And that the noise permitted by music's time was falling under the bylaws. So I thought when those hearings took place and what was kind of settled upon, that obviously the live music stops at 10. No more live music, no more amplification of instruments and people singing, dancing, etc. However, After that, the bylaw kicked in, and that's what everyone agreed on. So under the bylaw, it was even said that indoors has to cease at midnight, from what I understand, if you have an indoor permit, correct? And that outdoors is 10 p.m. However, every place that holds an alcohol license stays open till 1 a.m. So I can, with pure conviction, 110% say that there's no bar or restaurant turns their music and everything off at midnight. So everybody's subject to a violation from midnight to 1, because even though the live music stops, they're putting something on, people are still in there, and it sets everybody up. There's a big gray area here, and I'm in that gray area as well because I hold a license. So I thought that there was soft noise that can be emanated as long as it doesn't exceed the property line or 150 foot. That was also discussed. Just want some clarification on that, because it seems to be, I'm in a position here where either I basically shut my doors at 10, or most bars should just shut down at midnight, because once that live band stops and it's dead silence in there, everyone's going to leave anyway.
Chris, you care to take this one? I'm not that familiar
Yeah,
with the language.
I'm trying to follow where I think he's going, and I don't have the language in front of me, that the outside entertainment was what the 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. covered.
Right.
Inside was a different standard that I believe matched up with the liquor license.
He's talking about a bylaw.
But, well, and then he's adding a level of complexity, because there is also a general
Chief, do you
noise
have a,
bylaw for outside that maybe the chief can respond to better than I.
I'm glad Taylor actually brought this up, because we've had to clarify this in the past. This is, and he is only an outside business, right? So the outside entertainment, yes, must stop at 10, and that includes live or recorded music. That's how it's stated on the entertainment license. Live or recorded music, not plainly audible beyond 150 feet and played between the hours of whatever you agree on. Most of them have been 6 to 10, but now some have been extended. The inside entertainment license, yes, the board agreed to amend those regulations. Midnight was the drop dead hour for inside entertainment. However, on the inside entertainment license, I believe it says noise not to exceed the premises. So as long as the noise can't be heard off the premises of an inside entertainment venue, they're not in violation of anything.
Well, the outside permit should read the same, as long as you can't hear it past the property
Well, that's
line.
not for me to decide.
Right.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Chief.
Chief. I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah.
So that's the gray area here for me, where I don't understand. I'll just be honest that we've been playing by the book. We've been great, no problems. I haven't seen an officer all summer. Friday night, I saw somebody at 10:11 on a Friday night,
Yeah.
and they said something about some light speaker music.
Right.
I mean,
Well, I appreciate you.
You know, I just.
Yeah, moving ahead. I think though we're not here to debate the bylaws tonight though. What I'd like to do is go ahead and address your specific request to, increase the length of time to earlier time. Michael?
Yeah, and I think to Taylor's point, I do see the confusion, and I think that, the outside, his restaurant, I've been down there several
Yeah.
times. The conversation that goes on in the place is louder than the music. So I think it is something the board should take back up. It is not on the agenda, so I
Right.
respectfully ask that we put it on the agenda to have a conversation.
That'd be,
And then I'd like to move that we approve the request by Perks to extend the starting time on weekday entertainment licenses to 11:30, and on Sunday entertainment license to 1 p.m.
With all other terms and conditions of the previous license.
yes.
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any more discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
And thank you very much. So we've approved this, and then we'll put on the agenda, as Michael's requested,
Okay.
to have a discussion, possibly to clarify your other issue.
And then potentially on that next hearing, my license could say the same as the other license, not to
But that would
exceed,
be-
if
I think
we have the
that's
hearing
what
here.
Michael's requested, to have the clarification of that.
Very well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is request by the Children's Center for a one-day beer and wine license for an event to be held at the Cultural Center, October 28, 2018.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I need to recuse myself from that. Children's Center is part of HESH, and I'm the vice president of the board of HESH, so I'm going to recuse.
Okay, Michael?
I move that we approve the request by the Children's Center for one-day beer and wine license for the event to be held at Cultural Center on October 28, 2018, and waiver of $400 room rental fee.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Passed. Next, accept a gift of memorial bench. Michael?
I move that we accept the gift of a memorial bench to be placed at Saquatucket Harbor on completion of the project.
Is there a second?
For discussion, I'll second it.
Okay, seconded. Discussion? Chris?
I do think on this, if the board wanted to accept it, I think that the recommendation that came back, there was two elements. One, that the location would be determined by the harbor master, and then secondly, DPW has historically requested a certain type of bench, so there is some consistency. In this case, he did also recommend, though, a granite bench, which I think Mr. Hooper has left. But, so I think if the board wanted to, I would ask that those two decisions be deferred to those two agencies so we can maintain that level of consistency.
Ed?
Well, you know, the benches that Link refers to around town with, you know, the traditional park bench, the one nice feature about that, especially for some of us older folks, me not yet, but sneaking up on me, a lot of the benches that are granite are just benches with no arms, and people sit down and have it without having something to push on, have a tough time getting up. And we see that at the benches in the little park by the fountain in front of Brooks Academy a lot, and have had several complaints about that. So when you look into it, the design of the actual bench, if that could be taken into consideration, that's, you know, my preference of having the traditional park bench or some of these wooden.
Something with arms on it?
Yeah, something with arms on it. The other side is, you know, during the winter, if you sit down on one of the granite benches, they're awful cold and suck the heat right out of you, whereas a wooden bench can be a little bit warmer to sit on.
Mr. Rendell?
Yes, sir. I just want to, we have a family member here, Mr. Kerry, who's representing the family. Would you like an opportunity to come up and speak a little bit about it?
My name is Bill Carey, and my parents are recently deceased. Well, my father died a while ago. He was a master mariner and really enjoyed Saquatucket Harbor. He was a full-time resident in the summertime with the Windsong, our sailboat. And since our parents passed, we would like to have an opportunity of remembering them in some fashion. And, you know, overlooking Saquatucket Harbor was so important. Saquatucket Harbor is such a critical location. I don't know if you realize it, but I'm sure John does. But you come out of the harbor and you head 180 degrees due south, and you come right to Nantucket, and you know, 22 nautical miles, and you end up, you know, having some of the most beautiful places to travel to. Edgartown is 26 nautical miles. And it was very meaningful to my father and us children. We were the very lucky beneficiaries of that. And so we're committed to working with you, whatever you think makes the most sense. We kind of, as children, thought about, you know, what would be beautiful, and we all sort of came up with, you know, we went shopping and looking at Cape Cod, I forget the name of the place there, at the Brewster Orleans line, where they have those, and also Mackey Monuments has some beautiful beautiful looking granite benches, and I just thought that would be beautiful to have there. But we're committed to working with you. We want to have an inscription on it, you know, that says, in loving memory of our parents. So that's kind of, you know, where we're coming from. And you have a beautiful harbor, a $7.5 million construction project, I think is what I heard tonight. So we'd like to enhance that and have something beautiful there that I think the finishing touches really are the things that are very important on a big expensive project like that. And I think a granite, personally, I think a granite bench would be very nice. And I understand, I hear exactly what you're saying, and I don't have the answer to that, but we're committed to working with John in whatever way that makes the most sense.
Okay.
So,
Is that,
Yeah, just, look around, see what you can find.
sure.
Okay.
And we'll work with John, whatever John says.
Chris?
I was just, since Lincoln has it for consistency, the mahogany with the powdered steel, I mean, they can still do the inscription on that. So if you wanted the arms, I would at least suggest to give Lincoln some direction to.
But, I'm not an
You're
expert
not?
in what's available, so there may be something that works in granite too,
Okay,
Okay,
so.
thank you.
just trying to give Lincoln some direction.
Michael?
Yeah, I mean, I would leave it
I
for
would-
John and them to work together. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think we need to be
Be my
more
preference.
involved in that. I think we approve the request and let them figure out the details.
We have a, John, you need to say more, or we'll move
I was
ahead?
just gonna say, you say consistency, just understand, we have a current granite memorial bench at the harbor.
I love granite,
Me too.
and I can get up off of it. I'm not sitting there when it's cold.
And I can't too if you help me.
With that said, we have a motion and a second, so.
Just a quick, did the Waterways Committee look at this request?
They have,
Okay, good.
yes, sir.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Aye.
Let me just correct, I went through the chairman with this request. We got it after our last meeting, so he knew I was coming forward with it. We had the discussion, and he felt fine with it, so,
And when you settle on a final location, you'll take it back?
absolutely, absolutely. And I'll come back to you with that plan.
Okay, good. That motion's been passed, so we'll move on. The next is the Harwich Pines Association. I've got a note that they're not able to make it tonight, so they've asked to reschedule that to August 20th.
Yes,
that
that's
correct,
correct, Mr. Chairman.
Next on the agenda is Dennis Harwich, Yarmouth Wastewater Spatial Legalization. Chris?
Yeah, just in light of the hour, Mr. Chairman, I think we just wanted to kind of get this material, this is the same material on this item and the next item that was on last time. Perhaps on the August 20th meeting, that there could be more of a discussion in regards to elements in it. Maybe just suffice to say that on the DHY, we do have legislation that is currently being reviewed by House Counsel. I don't think I've heard back yet that House Counsel has weighed in on it. Once we get that input, we will certainly provide that to the board. But this is just a formulation to create the partnership entity, and then the details will be in the agreement, similar to what we did with Chatham. But I think this is just more of a outline of what needs to be completed.
Mr. Chair?
Don?
Mr. Chair, if this gets brought forward, the specific question was, what was the language that was changed? And how does it currently read then in the legislation? So all of this is fine, but that's,
We haven't heard back from House Counsel.
but that's the
yet.
question
Okay.
that we were punting on.
Once we hear back.
And that's appropriate. I know when I read this in, more detail and I get some comments, I have some questions too, Chris, I want to full discussion on.
Okay.
Which falls kind of into the category that we need a full and detailed discussion on this as we move ahead, because it's a big deal. And so we'll wait until, I guess you just keep us updated of how it's going through the House, and we'll find out.
Yes.
Michael?
Might I suggest you get those questions to Chris so he can come with the answers?
Very appropriate. We'll do that.
We'll see each other tomorrow morning, because
Tomorrow.
there's a wastewater
Yeah.
committee meeting,
Right.
sport committee, so.
Yep. We'll do that.
And the next item is just the overview of land use controls, kind
Same.
of similar
Same
to
question.
that, so.
Okay, next on the agenda is Conservation Law Foundation, legal action,
G. G.
Wastewater.
Wastewater,
wastewater support.
the RFP.
Person,
Pardon?
your PR person.
It's not just
The
PR.
wastewater communication outreach coordinator.
I missed my most important one.
Don't get me in trouble, Ed. It's not a PR thing. It's not PR.
It is
It's outreach.
bilaterals, listening as well as speaking.
So, Mr. Chairman, maybe an overview on
Yeah,
that, just on
please.
the wastewater communication outreach coordinator. We have put together the RFP. The idea is to, I'll present this tomorrow morning to the committee, the wastewater support committee, solicit comments, and then we will make necessary revisions and then get this out on the street. I believe, as the title implies, communication outreach coordinator is just to make sure that we have someone above and beyond just myself and a few other staffers that would help to coordinate some of the questions that are coming in and give a person for the community to reach out to have specific questions be asked and to have them kind of have someone to help walk through the process.
And I know, I had a couple of questions that comments I raised on the RFP. One was I wanted to delete the reference to public relations, because I think for me and most people, that's basically a negative connotation of selling the project rather than communicating and coordinating the work. I also would rather that we did not, at least initially, restrict this to $20,000. You know, that's our internal goal, but I don't want to limit as we ask questions. And the third question I had was the timing. August 30th, the way it's going, that's, you know, we certainly need to delay that and give a reasonable chance for responses to RFP, whether that's 2 weeks or, you know, so we get some
Traditionally, you do 2
chance.
weeks. I think that's what we were kind of targeting.
Yeah.
We can go
We
longer.
can go longer.
That's
Yeah.
not an issue.
I'd like to see at least 30 days.
Yeah, I just want, because it's an unusual request, I want to be sure he gets a chance to get beat around. So those are my three comments, and if we move to the next time, we'll, you know, send any other comments to Chris.
Sure. So if I could, that 20,000, you don't want to exclude anybody who might be over 20,000. Should we maybe deal with that as an ad alternate, right? So we have what can you do for 20 and then.
I would like to not close the door if we get something that we really feel strongly about, you know, going in. No, that's our internal.
Yeah, I think if I understand the chair's point, if we put it out without a number and we get 5 proposals that are in the 30,000 range, that gives us a measure.
Right.
That's probably a good idea. Just by practice, traditionally, you do put some kind of number in
Yeah.
there. I think in this case, we probably do want to avoid putting a number with the acknowledgement that we may get ones that are too much.
That are too much or
but
we don't have interest in.
I think we're trying to gauge the marketplace.
Exactly. Any other comments on this? We'll bring it back. Those are just my few points.
Yeah, you know, I agree in the thing that reads newspaper posting, you know, it says to provide public relations services, which, like you, I take, you know, we're trying to sell something, and what we're in fact trying to do is provide information services to communicate the sewer work that the town will be undertaking, and that we communicate, instead of saying PR consultants, you know, communication professionals, you know, because that's the heart of what we're trying to
Message
have,
received.
Yeah.
Well, but
Take
it's
out all PR.
But it's more than communication, it's also coordination, be sure there's a central point. So I don't want to lose that,
There's the issue
that
of
aspect.
being somewhat of an almost an ombudsman too, so, but.
I think the language is not that bad if you take out public relations.
Thank you. It'll be right out of there. No more PR.
Okay. Glad you guys kept me on track, so we're talking about that. Next on the agenda is Conservation Law Foundation legal action pertaining to wastewater. Chris, I think we're just going to have a general discussion at some point. Let me remind you where
Yeah, go ahead.
I was pressing this, and within what we can do legally and stay within the bounds of what's appropriate, I feel as a board, what I want us to consider was if we can do anything to make a political statement in support of the two businesses that are very important to us that are being threatened. It hasn't happened yet, but they're being threatened by suit. And even though we can't get into a legal arraignment, we can certainly, I think, show political will that we support these businesses. And that's what I wanted to discuss. And it sounds like we need some more legal feedback to know to what extent can we make a statement. But I'll throw it open to the rest of the board and you, Chris.
Yeah, I concur, Mr. Chairman. I think this one is a little bit of an interesting element. Both agencies don't receive permits directly from the town. They actually receive those permits to operate their wastewater systems directly from the Commonwealth of Mass. And this is really an element that says whether the Commonwealth of Mass should be issuing that permit or whether it should be done by the federal government, the EPA. So it's a little bit beyond our initial scope, but certainly we have a comprehensive wastewater management plan that covers the entire community, and I think these two resorts have relied upon that comprehensive wastewater management plan. And how does that interconnection work? So I think at this stage, just maybe for general public consumption, that the town has been in touch with these two resorts. I know the chair did attend some of the meetings just to kind of make sure we're both talking to each other and understanding where they are. And if there's appropriate action that can be taken or should be taken, then I think a formal request will be made of the board. But I know the Julie Kavanaugh, the chair, has attending some of those meetings to get a sense and what she thinks, I think, is appropriate for the board to come back to the board. I think she'll, won't hesitate to bring that back.
Can you ask our attorney to look at what we can say?
Sure. We have provided this material to him already, so we can ask.
What we can do in support?
His initial advice was go easy, go slow.
Okay. Next on the agenda is MassWorks, the Infrastructure Program 2018 Grant Application Authorization to Submit.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wasn't sure if we had quite a bit of assistance, or I had quite a bit of assistance in this, putting this together from Charlene, did a great job from the planning department, and then we also had Stephen Rhodes, gentleman from VHB, who we have engaged to kind of help with the estimate. I kind of alluded, this information is kind of hot off the presses, that the original project, if the town were to do it ourselves, if it was our road, the $250,000 that was appropriated at town meeting probably would be sufficient to complete the work. Unfortunately, it is not our road, and what this is it's the construction of a sidewalk from Saquatucket Harbor up to basically Bank Street Road, to make a connection to have people go from Harwich Port to Saquatucket Harbor. Because it is the state roadway, we have been in touch with the state, and the state Department of Transportation has been helpful, and they came out and did some survey work. There is a small river, part of Coal Brook, that goes underneath. So there is a pedestrian-type bridge that would have to be constructed. With all that being said, the project estimated cost, again, this is to do things in accordance with how the Commonwealth would like to see it done, is $826,500. So the money that was appropriated at town meeting to kind of work towards resolving issues, instead of having people walk in the street on Route 28 to get to different sites, we would get them onto a safer sidewalk. So we did put together this grant application to attempt to obtain the balance that would be needed of $576,500 to complete. The program is called MassWorks. It is funded through the state. I believe it's a coordination of DOT as well as the Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development. And you have to have an economic development component to the public works project that you're doing. So I do want to kind of publicly thank the folks from Outer Cape Healthcare, because they did submit kind of material for us that a lot of their people that would be utilizing their facility, which is right across the street from Saquatucket Harbor, that it does have a greater option of creating jobs and stimulating jobs in that area by having this sidewalk constructed. So the request for the board this evening is to basically submit for the grant application in hopes that we get the balance needed to complete the project.
Okay. Any questions, comments? So we're just asking to approve your grant application, right?
It did ask in the grant application
sign a
for a
letter.
vote of the
Board of
governing
Selectmen.
body.
Is there a motion to move on this?
I move that we request the Mass Works Infrastructure Program 2018 grant and to sign the letter that's in the packet relating to that.
Second.
There's discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Moving to old business, we have a second reading of the fraud assessment policy. Carol? I appreciate you added a statement that makes me happier, so.
Good evening again. Based on the last Board of Selectmen's meeting where this item was presented for first reading, you had requested a change or some additional wording. I've highlighted that wording and italicized it so that you know exactly what would change in this document. The board had asked for an independent party to, for, let's say, that someone had questions about one in my position and things that were being done, where could they go? And so what was added is, it says, if the suspected misconduct involves the town administrator or finance director, the town of Harwich recommends one or both reporting options. Office of the Inspector General, confidential fraud, waste, and abuse 24-hour hotline, and that's already established, or by contacting the town's legal counsel. In addition, so that hotline at the OIG is an established hotline that's already in place. Anyone can use it. You can be a resident, you can be, non-resident, it doesn't matter. So that's already in place. In addition to that, if the town chose to, or another alternative, I guess, for the town, there are companies out there that do hotlines, and they do them every day. So I just reached out to one to get a quote for you, just so that we had something to talk about. So you can pay, $60 a month, and with a small setup fee, and you can have a hotline established, if that's what you choose to do. But so there are other options out here other than what I've presented for you. I just thought that this was probably the clearest way to present it.
Thank you, Carol. Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I personally am not going to support this in its current form. In the past week, without getting into any kind of big details, one member of this board approached our legal counsel for to question the legality of a couple of actions that were taken by the town administrator. Now, the response of our lawyer was to show pretty much everyone in town that he's not an honest broker. The fact of the matter is, his next move was to take an email with a kind of mashed rationale about what was discussed and send it to the town administrator. Now, the whole point of somebody dropping a dime on the possibility of waste or fraud is the ability to feel that you're covered, that whoever you're reporting it has your back. And our council, which I would like to have an agenda discussion about in a more broad sense, but our council has shown through these actions that even on the Board of Selectmen level, he works for the town administrator, he doesn't work for the town. And I've had a couple of employees express that kind of concern to me. So given that fact, and given the fact that he can't seem to be able to understand what team he plays for, he shouldn't be in this thing at all.
Can I speak?
Yes, please.
I don't think it's uncommon for, or in my experience in all the years I've been working with municipalities, I don't think it's uncommon for a board to have their own separate legal counsel. It's definitely not uncommon.
That's a
But,
discussion for
however,
another time.
OIG's office already has a hotline set up. So it's kind of duplicity, in my opinion, but certainly my opinion.
Don, do you have a suggestion on?
I'd like to bring it back, because I'd also want a discussion about legal counsel that's broader than what I just brought up. But I can't do it because it's not agenda, but I could do it relative to this, because he's basically shown, that's a legitimate use of town council for any member of this board to make an inquiry. And if it's about the town administrator, and an email comes like 20 minutes later and says, hey, by the way, one of the members of the board just questioned something, he's shown that he can't be trusted. I mean, and that's really the element here, is that you're trying to trust somebody in this sequence of events to keep whatever you said confidential and represent the best interests of, quote, the town, not anyone in the town, not the board even. Right? This is about representing the town, and he's disqualified himself from doing that. So I would like to have this brought back, perhaps with him around, so he can explain himself, because I'm ripped. I mean, quite frankly, it wasn't about me, but it might as well have been about me, because it has to do with this body and the representation of the town, and just who the hell he thinks he represents.
If the rest of the board is in agreement, let's bring it back. I want to be sure we get this right. Michael?
I'm in agreement. Is there any, that's the only change, though? I mean, we could basically set Carol's mind at ease. Is there anything else that we would ask for? Because I think the reporting person should be separate. I like the hotline idea. I'm not sure we have to have the redundancy of town council, but I don't want to extend this.
Right.
I think Don's statement's correct, and something needs to be corrected. But other than that, is there a problem with this policy, and should we pass it
I have no concerns
Contingent.
other than this. We can.
contingent on a reporting source?
Yeah, because we may very well want to look into what Carol's saying and have a different legal counsel set aside for
Well,
that
that's coming
purpose.
back, but we okay with this?
But
without
she
this
did
statement?
terrific work on the rest of this. I mean, it's really.
Do you want to make a
Well,
motion
you can-
based
well,
on
if you-
contingent upon the source, so we can
Yeah,
finish this?
I would move that we approve the policy with the exception of the paragraph relating to the suspected misconduct involving the town administrator, the finance director, which we will bring back to add an additional source and delete town's legal counsel from the text.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any more discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Carol.
Is that unanimous?
It was unanimous. Did you vote? It's unanimous.
I just couldn't hear, Mr. Chairman, that's all.
Next on the agenda is community center Sunday openings. We'd had discussion this earlier in the year, and we were reminded, I think, by a few days ago that, or let me say it differently, we're asking for the status of that.
Yes, I'm happy,
Okay,
Mr. Chairman,
Chris.
you know, there's a lot of different moving pieces to running a $65 million a year business. And this one, my memory was not as strong as I wish it had been, that going through the budget process, this was a enhancement of services that was put in response to some of the board's concerns. I was trying to remember and didn't initially remember, and then was challenged and looked into it more carefully, that I thought that the enhancement of services in general were taken out. In the minutes reviewing that, I had said it was clear to me that the intent of the board was to have the Sunday openings be included. So Carol did put it in for the budget. I did not provide instruction to staff for July 1 to commence implementation of that. I just did not simply remember it correctly. I have now met with staff to say that we do need to have the Sunday openings and commence doing that. So we are in the process of beginning the recruitment.
Okay.
We are fairly limited in the existing staff that we have. So if we can do something as a softer opening, we will consider that. But we do need to hire basically a part-time custodian, additional staff personnel for manning or personing the desk, and then a recreation official to run the rec programs. So we will set up an organization meeting, and I'll try to get a better timeline for when we're able to accomplish that and see when we're able to have that open on Sundays and then we'll report the same.
Okay.
So the money is in the budget, and we didn't catch that as something that needed to be implemented for July 1. So my apologies for that oversight.
Thank you, Chris. Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one thing, as you're going back and looking at this, without getting an entire section of the population mad at me, the senior population has the opportunity to be there during the day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. This was brought up specifically because kids weren't able to get access to the traditional operating hours of this. We built a community center, not a senior center and a youth center, so the focus of this, at least initially, should be what can the kids get to do in the center if it's going to open on a Sunday?
Yeah, a great opportunity. There are several agencies that operate out of that building. Obviously, the community center itself, that's the focal point, and then the rec side is the focal point the custodial services provide. This does not extend, and nor did it extend in the budget request that we put together for Channel 18 to be open on the weekend, to be open on Sunday, and it did not also, and Council on Aging is not open on Saturday, so we did not propose to have that open on Sunday. So it very much is recreation and weight room oriented for the use. We probably will try to staff, if people want to rent rooms, since we have staff there, we probably will try to engage in that. And those are some of the details that we need to work out and report back. I saw a bad face in the back, so I
Michael?
probably missed.
Can I just request that this gets put on the next agenda for a update, so that we don't waste
Lose
any
it.
more time?
Okay. Thank you, Chris. And let's move on then. The next is, I assume, Carol, you're up again with budget transfers. It's your night.
Hi again. Back in July, at the beginning of July, we came before the Board of Selectmen with some budget transfers, and then we went before the Finance Committee for those transfers as well. You had approved them, but what the request came was for additional information, more descriptions. And so I put a table together for all of the budget transfers. There was just over $210,000 in transfers. And then a question had come about and said there were mistakes. And so I identified those transfers where there were mistakes, and then gave you an overall percentage of the total mistakes. So all of the budget transfers, again, were just over $210,000. Your budget was over $60 million, so they represent a 0.35% of the total operating budget. The ones that were associated with errors were $24,500, and it was a 0.04% of your total operating budget. The remaining of the transfers were primarily due to like escalation costs for advertising and employee turnover and unforeseen expenses, and then finally transfers for the pet burial ground costs. The attached table, and I apologize, it's pretty small print, but the attached table just explains in more detail exactly how the over expenditure occurred and the reason why. And I can go over with you if you're interested. If you want to talk about particular items, I'd be happy to do that as well.
Any further questions for Carol? Michael?
Yeah, thank you, Carol, for putting this together. You know, I asked for it. When the word mistake was used, and I think I wanted an outline for the board of what the mistakes were for looking at future budgets, and I think it also should go to the Finance Committee. Thank you for putting the report together. As far as the detail goes of what mistakes were made by department heads or just budget, I think we're still missing some of that, but I'm satisfied with the report.
Other comments?
And thank you for your work.
Thank you, Carol. If there's no other questions or comments, thank you very much, Carol. This helps us out. Town Administrator's report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will try to go kind of quickly due to the late hour. Just first thing, this was alluded to earlier, part of Carol's presentation, that I just included the press release on the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. So we do have that online and available to folks if they're interested in looking at that. Just as a reminder, we did get a Community Compact Award grant for $5,000 to engage that work too. So the Lieutenant Governor came out to present that. So it was funded through grants, that effort. The next item was the award of Community Development Block Grant. We have entered into partnership with the folks up in Truro for a Community Development Block Grant, and we were successful in that effort with the towns of Eastham and Provincetown, as well as us in Truro. The total block grant award was $1,142,813, and I believe that would help in terms of housing assistance and childcare, if I do remember the details on that. At the last meeting, under item C, we had a gentleman that came in and had a concern about a fire pit on Old Post Road. So the deputy fire chief did go out at the direction of the chief to look at that situation. I believe there may have been earlier calls, and that it was deemed that it was a fire pit and that there was no excessive burning that occurred or any significant issues. So that was a request that was made under kind of citizens forum to have that concern be brought up. So we have looked at that. On the
Excuse me, Chris, we have a question.
Sorry.
Did anyone get back to the homeowner that made the complaint? Has anyone spoken to him? Just to let him know that we did go out.
So I had actually gone out before he was before the board. We received the initial complaint on the 15th. They went out that night, looked at it, there was no problem. I went out the following day, spoke to him at length. The report that's in the packet is a summary of that. So when he appeared before the selectmen 2 Mondays ago, that had already been taken care of. I had a conversation with him, and when I left, I felt like he understood where I was coming from. We can't limit people's ability to have a fire pit in their yard when it's in compliance. So we have not reached back out to him. I have not reached back out to him since.
Do you know if the chief has? I have not.
I don't know. I'm sure that the chief hasn't. I submitted that report to him, and as far as he was concerned, the matter was closed. I don't believe he reached back out to the...
We can follow up with that.
I think that when the assistant town administrator went over and approached the gentleman, I thought there was a dialogue that we were going to look at it and get back to him. I'd just like to show him that we got back to it.
Yeah. No, it's fair. On the, let me
Thank
see.
you, David.
The next one I have, I know we started the night, maybe it's a nice way to kind of end the night, is we do have several letters that we received for employee accommodations. We got one from Jen Clark that works in our community development department. I like the comment that was made that she was unfailingly pleasant throughout the experience. Also, there was a bike accident in which a DPW employee, I believe, rendered some assistance. So that was Dan, somebody help me with his name, Oslaga. So I apologize for getting his, but he was one of the first ones on. I believe that the chief had mentioned that earlier. And then also we just, because I think the fire chief had mentioned these, Officer Griffith and Officer Ruggiero had responded on Saturday, July 21st to multiple calls, and they had rendered some assistance during a fire. So we did put that in the packet for folks to look at. At the next item is report on fees. I did bring up at a department heads meeting about just asking if we had reviewed fees and when was the last time fees were updated in certain agencies. So I did get back from the Board of Health that they had, apparently pursuant to Mass General Law, that they can actually do their fee structure within their confines of the law, and that the last time they were updated was 2014. So I did provide that information. We will continue to look at the fees to see if other ones need to be updated. On the next one, I want to just, he's still in the crowd, so I will kind of officially acknowledge him, John Rendon. We had an opportunity on the MassWorks grant they had extended out a portion of that money from the state specifically for dredge projects. And we had to have it in by Friday, so we had a fairly tight turnaround. So John Rendon, the harbor master, did go and assist and put, well, he did 99% of the work, and then I just submitted it on the town's behalf. It's 72,000 with the town funding 36. We do traditionally have money in the budget for dredging. I think this is important. The grant overall, I believe, has a max of 2.5 million, and I know we do have a jetty in the future on the capital plan that needs to be done. So I think getting on their radar that we are a community that does have harbors and we need some assistance is a good idea. So I appreciate John's effort very much in putting that together in kind of short order. And then the last item that I have, I think that we had for the board, that there was concerns in regards to the crosswalks at Brooks Library across Main Street. You know, my office is right there, and I hear, you know, I wish drivers would be a little bit nicer, quite honestly, but we definitely have a lot of issues in that area, and I appreciate the library staff kind of bringing that to our attention. I know it was addressed to the board as well as to myself. I have had discussions already with Lynn Cooper. He has ordered signs that will go in the road to try to slow people down. And we are also going to have additional painting done to make the crosswalks much more noticeable. So that is in process to attempt to be done to try to alleviate that in the short term.
Don?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to throw my hat into that ring. I was personally hitting that crosswalk a number of years ago. 20 miles an hour, so I mean, it comes up on you. I know that's what
That explains it.
That explains everything. Yeah, I know. But the bottom line is people just have no idea it's there. They've just gotten through the bike path. They have gotten past the big intersection where people are making left turns, right turns, coming down from Oak Street. And the last thing in the world, they're not even following the speed reduction that goes 40, 35, 20. It's pretty much, I know the police have put a cruiser at Town Hall often because by then it's 20 miles an hour. But the bottom line is it didn't feel like 20 when I got hit.
Jenny?
Yes, thanks. The safety of pedestrians in the intersections around the library has been a concern for many years. Speed is an issue, but it isn't just speed, it's the configuration of the intersections at Bank Street and Main Street, and also at Brooks Park at Main Street and Oak Street. Part of the intersections are extremely wide and long sloping curves. There is no corner at Brooks Park, it's a curve. And so the crosswalk starts on a diagonal. So that's going to be, you know, some work. The signage is great, and I was really pleased that Link, he responded right away and very positively, and so the staff really appreciates that. Other things will take longer and, you know, and cost some money. So in April, I had attended a traffic safety meeting, and then I followed up with a letter. It's not in your packets, but I think Sandy was going to give it to the board. Have you seen that, or?
We have not.
Okay, I have copies, or I can email it if you'd like, but it's also in the trustees' packets, because I knew it would be discussed here tonight. The trustees meet on Wednesday, so it's on the town website. The whole trustee packet is there, just like the selectmen do, and it's on the library website also. Because it gives a lot of more detail, but I know it's late and you don't want to hear all the detail. And you probably, but Chris is right, I don't think, it's not just the drivers, you're probably hearing the pedestrians and saying some, you know, not so nice words as they almost get hit. We have our staff park across the street in the summer just to try to save room in the parking lot for patrons. And so we personally have witnessed this and almost been hit many times. In fact, it's kind of a joke among the staff that when one of us gets killed in the crosswalk, we want to make sure everyone knows it's workers' compensation so that a family gets the highest benefit possible. But a big concern, so I'm really pleased that staff members do that, you know, because really,
Bill's going to quote that in his paper.
Yeah, it's true. It's in my letter.
Chris?
I feel your pain.
But I think,
literally.
what was I gonna say? But staff members are aware of the issues, and so we're really cautious. We're really concerned about the public that isn't used to crossing there, and they have no idea. And you have moms with 2 and 3 kids and strollers, and some walking and not really under voice control yet. And you have seniors and people with mobility issues trying to cross. In some of the areas where you're crossing, the traffic's coming up behind you to turn onto Oak Street or to turn down Bank Street. So you have your back to them. You don't even know that you're about to get hit. So anyway, it's a big issue, and I know that some of the longer term, there's been different traffic calming measures suggested during the several iterations of the Howard Center Initiative. I've been here 19 years now, and there's been like 2, I would say, iterations of that Howard Center Initiative. That seems to, a lot gets discussed, and then nothing really happens. So I know that on the capital plan has $50,000 for 2019, or did it get pushed back? Actually, I thought I looked at the most recent.
Jenny, I think that we may have had some good fortune through Chris and Matt. You want to speak to that, Chris?
Yeah,
That
actually,
may help
Mr.
out.
Chairman, I appreciate the opportunity. But obviously, with the cultural district and having people, trying to promote people walking from, certain areas to the cultural center and all the way to the library and ultimately on to White House Field and the community center, what we wanted to do is to make sure that we have a safe pathway. So I did, my first year I was here, and I have deferred it each year, put together that Harwich Center Initiative that I think was in 2001, 2002, that talks about improving the pedestrian access through this corridor. And I have moved it back each year as I do the budget, and I think that we need to leave that in for this year and have a more serious discussion. The other component to that is Matt Hart has been successful in having that ADA study done. We will be bringing that before the board, and I did walk that stretch with Matt, specifically in that corner, to see if we can improve the ADA ramps and some of the pedestrian access in that area. And that grant, I believe, was $30,000 in planning money and $250,000 in construction. So we are looking at a longer-term solution. And then we also have asked Lincoln Hooper to engage the Cape Cod Commission, the gentleman, Steve Tupper, to come and give us some recommendations on that.
And I think Matt got some positive response from his grant application, so it was very helpful.
So do you envision the Howard Center Initiative being reactivated, or would this be kind of merged in with the cultural district?
Well, I think they're related, but the cultural district is more identification of different assets in it, and this would be to fix the street network to make sure people, if we're going to promote them walking, we should probably give them a safe place to walk.
It was very interesting at the Traffic Safety Committee meeting that I went to. They had the traffic safety people from the Cape Cod Commission were there, and to hear their discussion, they were discussing, is it Pleasant Street and Miles Street? In Harwich Port, and so that was, Link had mentioned that was the plan, but the committee hasn't met yet, so so it hasn't been referred yet to the commission. I think that should come up with some interesting ideas, and not just, different people suggest different things, and, let's let the real traffic people tell us what it would be. So anyway, if there's help needed, I'd be willing to help work on it. There's a working group or a committee to kind of get that going again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. That
Chris,
concludes
is
my
that
comments this
okay?
evening, Mr. Chairman.
Selectmen's reports, Michael?
No.
Ed?
Well, after hearing that discussion of sort of speeds and traffic safety, while you're looking at things around town, on Depot Street, is it Depot in East Harwich?
East Harwich, Depot Road, I think.
I've had several people come up to me, and as you leave Route 28 heading up Depot Street, it's 30 miles an hour, and then you get to a point where it goes to 40 miles an hour, and you go over this little rise, and you're right on top of the bike trail. And coming the other way, it's 40 miles an hour until you finish you pass the bike trail, and then it drops to 30 miles an hour. And it would seem if the signs could be moved up the street 100 and 100, I don't know how far it is, but a couple hundred feet. So it's on the other side of the bike trail where it's, the bike trail crossing is in the 30 mile an hour.
Yeah, I'm
if
familiar with
could
that
be looked
stretch.
at, yeah.
We'd certainly look at that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. These, the white signs, the regulatory signs, are done by a warrant to the state legislature. What we could do is put a yellow advisory sign there with a bicyclist that's halfway off the bike, based on what we're seeing recently. But just so everybody knows, you'd have to vote sign placements and send it up to Beacon Hill to do it the other way.
There's more of a process for the weight
Yeah, you
signs that
can't
we
just
have to have
put it up and
engineering
move it.
studies attached to them.
Wish you could, yeah.
Don, Selectmen's report, anything?
I got nothing. It's wonderful being here in the vacation paradise in the summer.
I'll accept a movement, move
moved.
to adjourn. Second, all in favor?
There's some cupcakes left.